How about now? I bet you can hear me now. Thank you for catching that, Althena and Tyler. Yeah, so I'll just redo that. Not that I really need to introduce myself. But hello, it's me, Peter. And I'm happy to see you. It's some nice weather out right now, so that's good. The reason you couldn't hear me a second ago is because I've been doing a lot of side hustle recently. I picked up some contract work. And that contract work was interviewing folks about their experiences trying to implement anti-racist practices in their classroom while using open educational resources. It was all very fun, but to make sure that the audio quality stayed pretty good, I muted my own voice in the software that I was using to record these interviews, so that I would not have to worry about any interference or anything like that. Yeah, so... that was fun. I actually just finished that contract up, I guess officially, technically yesterday. And I sent an invoice off and I should get some money. Yeah, so exciting times for us all. Hello to everyone in the chat so far. We've got Catherine and we've got Tyler and we've got Althena. Yeah, how are y'all doing? I, for one, am waiting for some food to get here because I have a hunger. And I was going to make food, but my partner's staying at work late because she's working on a pretty cool project. For those of you who don't know, my partner Dre, she is not a carpenter, but a joinerer. So her specialty is joinery, which is like fixtures and cabinetry and stuff like that. And so she is building herself a toolbox, and her work is like, yeah, we'll let you do that and use work tools for sure, because it all works out. But the flip side is she can't do that while she's technically on the clock, so she's staying a little late today. So it's just you and me and the dog, who will be here soon. I promise it was not a lie about getting to see the dog if you saw my tweet. Tyler, I feel ya. You want to talk about stress with applying to jobs. Ooh. Yeah, so I just, I've been applying for jobs as well. So, as we all know, I am not currently fully employed, although I'm, as time goes on, wondering if maybe that's okay or not. Maybe it's just more my speed to have several smaller jobs. I have ADHD, and so really staying focused on a single thing for any amount of time is a real struggle. And I found that lately, my combination of doing a bunch of contract work in combination with doing my part-time job has been actually kind of nice. But the flip side is I sure would love some stability. The pandemic has really made me think that stability must be nice because I feel like I haven't had any. Yeah, so, there's that. Megan says that she's doing pretty good, enjoying my evening off from cataloging until I start it all again tomorrow. Ooh, yes. Cataloging is mentally straining. I'm doing another contract gig that is cataloging adjacent, and I feel ya. Like it's really cool because I'm doing cataloging of digital resources, online videos, educational videos, and it's great because I get to go and watch the first 17 seconds of each one, and they're all very interesting. But I have approximately 4,000 to get through apparently. So I only get to spend 17 seconds watching the video itself, just to get the metadata that already exists so that I can then later on enrich it a bit. But it is fun. Yeah, so food is important, Athena. Yeah. So, and my tummy is rumbly. I've been trying to be good recently, so as everyone has, I have gained additional mass during this pandemic, which is, it is what it is. It is not my preferred state, but I'm also trying to be kind to myself and not stress too much about weight. But as a side effect, I have been trying to be more conscious of what I eat. So I ate lots of carrots today, and an apple and some celery and all that jazz. It was all very good. And now I'm going to binge on some sushi. And yeah, judge me, I dare you. All right, so Tyler says, one of the jobs that I applied for is a cataloging position. What would you recommend to prepare for this role and the interview? I feel like there's a better way than paying for RDA Toolkit. Yeah, Megan, I'll let you take that. I do not work as a cataloger. Ooh, and I guess my skip guy's on his way soon. I don't work as a cataloger. I know the fundamentals. I know that RDA Toolkit is a thing. Hey, Damon. And one of the side effects, so I work at I don't work at a small system. Let's say that. My system has multiple branches. And it's big enough that at our central branch, we have an entire department that does all the cataloging. And so I get to see the records after they're created. But I myself do not create them. Every now and then I will catch something, or like I'll suggest a record enhancement because I had just read a book or I'm familiar with the work and I noticed that it's missing specific keywords. But other than that, not really my thing. But it would be fun to get more into it. My question for Megan, who does have more experience with cataloging, is what would you say, how useful would getting really proficient at Excel be in the realm of doing cataloging work? Let me know in the chat. Let us all know. I personally, I do a lot of data management, just as things that I do, and so I spend a lot of time in Excel, and I find that it is very useful in terms of doing batch record editing, so editing multiple records at a time. But I don't actually know how the cataloging side, like in a library, how that works. I assume it happens a lot in the ILS, but one never knows. Yeah. So today's stream, I just wanted to check in with folks, see how folks are doing, give folks opportunities to ask me questions or ask each other questions, as we have been doing for these streams. I'm never really quite sure what I want to do with the streams until we're actually doing it, and then folks start asking questions and we get a good conversation going. But people show up, and so I'm guessing that means that folks are getting use out of this, which is great. I should disclaim that I will step away briefly when my food gets here, but it'll be pretty obvious because I will immediately jump up and run away. Yeah. I'm just reading the comments. Nice. Yeah, it's... I think I've mentioned this in a past video, but it would be really cool. One thing that I would like to see library schools do is actually do installations of Horizon or anything by Sierra, or what's it called? Evergreen, I think. Pay for an install on a server and let folks play with that. At my university, we do have a server in-house that we put all kinds of software on, but that is not one of the softwares that gets put onto it. And I assume that it is because, at least up in the Metro Vancouver area, a lot of that catalog stuff and the records enhancement and the how do you say this? The actual putting the records in, that falls to clerks. And so also, I guess, though, it's worth mentioning that here in Vancouver, to be a clerk or to be a library tech, you do have to have a library and information technology diploma, which is around a bachelor's degree's worth of education, but like a very specific trades degree, which is cool. Yeah, it means that there's a lot of jobs and that they can pay a bit more for them. Hi, baby. The clickety clack means that the dog is here. You may have heard her boofing earlier. Hi, baby. I shall pick her up, and so you can see her, although the skip guy is like here almost, supposedly. Hi, baby.
Dad, this is not what I was expecting when I was playing.
Yeah, I know. Oh. Hi, how are you? So everybody, this is Victoria. She is the best dog. She is a very big dog, but so cute and very patient. However, she also gets very insistent when there's something she wants. I would think that maybe she had to pee, but we went pee right before this, and I think she's just getting a little stir crazy, which is understandable. If I was a dog, I would want to be outside all the time. But we've been doing this thing where we go outside for like 5 minutes and then she comes in because it's too hot. And that's just the existence that we live. So, yeah. Everything is doing pretty okay, though. Yeah. Vic, say hello. The people think that you're cute, and they are justified in thinking that. I could do that all day. She doesn't seem to hate it, so I think it's fine. I'm going to set you down now, baby, because I just can't imagine that your body is built for being held like this. Okay. There you go. Yes. Hello. One thing that I was thinking about trying to do, if anyone is amenable, I guess, is I've been thinking about trying to make these streams a little bit more interactive. And so the thought crossed my mind that I might try opening up a Google Hangout and then sending the links out either in the chat or having people email me or something like that, so that we can all, or at least some of us, those who want to, can all hang out on the stream together. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. Yeah. The mailman's here. Other things that have been going on, though, while we wait is... Yeah, so I finished 2 contracts. Like I said, one of them was doing interviews with faculty down in California who first attended a workshop to learn how to make their classrooms more anti-racist using open pedagogy. If you want to know what that is, let me know. And then one was collecting 400 records from an online repository of educational videos that we all know, but that shall, in the moment, remain nameless. And that those first 400 records were more of a proof of concept to see how we work together. So hopefully the folks who paid me to do that think that it's great. Is that... Oh, the dog found the mailman. Anyways, I'll be right back because food's here as well. Stay tuned. Nick, you're such a barker. Don't worry, y'all, I'm almost back. Okay, y'all, here I come. Please forgive me for eating on camera. I'm just so hungry. Okay, so now that we're back, I'm sorry for the crinkliness as I open this bag. I shall read the chat. Let's see. Does anyone have experience with an online MLIS degree program? Just finished my first semester, but it's hard for me to get the motivation to do all the readings because they're dense and technical. Yes. For what it's worth, it is the same. It is the same for MLIS degrees in person. It's fine. Today's menu is sushi. I love seafood. My partner does not. Since she's not here, it's a great opportunity for me to indulge. So I guess tonight's feature is we are doing a mukbang, and you get to watch me eat while answering questions. So I did not do my program online, but I heavily, strongly, encouragingly empathize with you in terms of how much and how dense the readings are. My little secret that I will pass on to you and that I pass on to everyone is, although you may feel compelled to do all of the readings, don't feel compelled to do all of the readings. Learning to skim is a super important skill. Read abstracts. Abstracts are super great if you're reading journal articles to get a feel for it. But it's not realistic to expect to read everything. My teachers might hate me for this one simple trick, but I read I'd say about 40% of the total words assigned to me. I looked at every article, but I did not read them all in detail. And that's just something that you have to do, especially when you're trying to balance your work-life balance. And I think secretly professors understand that that's the case. Like, we all have our lives going on while we're also trying to do grad school. But I think part of the reason that they give so many readings is they're just trying to give us the opportunity to learn. Like, I always think of grad school as, like, it's the place that you get to go and fail at things and try new things with low consequences. And when you do that, like, because that's the case, you should really take that as an opportunity to try new things and learn about as much as you want, either at a very superficial level or at a more deep level, if it turns out that it's something that you're very fascinated by. This is so good, sushi. Yeah, all dense and technical. Especially since I'm able to complete my homework perfectly fine by watching lectures and not reading. Yeah, right? Yeah, anyways. I see you've already gotten to that point. Omegasaurus Lawrence recommends that I start a Discord. That is a great idea. The question becomes, are there enough folks that would be interested in one? And I guess the answer to that would be just make one and find out. But I'm not against it, and I myself am in a couple of Discords. And when I think about who I'm in the Discords with, like, a couple of my friends are streamers, and they have a Discord. They're much smaller than I am, but I still don't quite really super understand who my audience is and what their motivations are. Like, I know a lot of you are librarians or librarians to be, or possibly librarians, potential librarians. And I love librarians, but I know that a lot of them don't tend to spend a lot of time in a Discord. So maybe, who knows, maybe I could be the librarian Discord gateway drug person. Who knows? Lesson plan writing. Ooh. Yeah, so around lesson plan writing, I do have experience with it. Little piece of trivia. When I was still in the Navy, I worked with an agency that shall remain unnamed. And towards the end of my time in the Navy, I ended up getting certified as adjunct faculty for a school that will also remain unnamed. And it was really great because the class talked about the different pedagogical methods for teaching learners from diverse backgrounds. And that ended up being something that I took with me everywhere I go. Like, I still use that, well, up until the pandemic and we stopped having programming. That's something that I still use now, even though I did it all the way back in 2013. So if you have any questions, leave them in the chat. But I would recommend, if you have an opportunity, take something like teaching methods or instructional design during whatever programming, or even check out Coursera. Coursera has a lot of really good programmings. LinkedIn Learning is a good option as well. Yeah, and see what's out there. Thinking about the amount of time that I spend on YouTube and researching the YouTube EDU side of things, I know that there aren't a ton of folks out there who, or I can't think of any folks that do instructional design as the subject of their YouTube channel. But if you're interested, I will share a link to the presentation that I gave at VidCon like 2017 or 2018. So at VidCon, which is the big YouTube convention, there was a mini thing called EduCon that YouTube hosted. And I did a panel on learning how to do like research on how to make good educational videos. Because I was in grad school and I was a keener. And so I basically put together a really neat annotated bibliography, and it's a slideshow deck, and I'm happy to share that. So if you want that, leave a message in the chat. Congratulations, Madeline. Which high school? Let me know in the chat. Also a feeling that professors know not everyone is doing all the reading. Ain't that the truth? And don't even get me started with open open notes book for online quizzes. So if you don't like quizzes or tests, I'm going to shamelessly plug UBC. The iSchool at UBC doesn't have tests. I mean, like a couple of the courses do, but it's almost all group work and like practical skills based assessment, which I find is really great. I know a lot of people don't like group work, but honestly, you're going to have to learn how to work with people. So you might as well do it in grad school. Figure out how to do it best. I think my best is giving textbook because of that fact, especially when there are summary bullet point lists and paragraphs at the end. The journal articles are the trickiest. Yeah, so with journal articles, read the my recommendation for reading journal articles, read the abstract first, read the introduction, like skim the introduction and then jump to the conclusion and see what the conclusion says. If you find that the abstract interests you and the conclusion interests you, then you can go back and read methods, and I guess this is dependent on it being scientific journal. If it's an editorial, just stick with the abstract. But if you find that what they found in the conclusion is fascinating and you want to learn how they came to that conclusion, then go back and read the rest and have a look at the figures. But yeah, otherwise don't stress about reading journal articles all the way. Now you know my secret. There's another YouTuber who's part of my little group who's a biologist. And in the before times, we had been talking about doing a collab around like research skills and study skills. And one of those skills was how to read an academic paper. And who knows, maybe I'll still do one of those videos. Let me know in the chat. Like, do you guys enjoy, or would you be interested in more videos that are around like those high research skills, like the LIS, the information science side of things? Or are you here for the libraries? Because like, yeah, I would like to do more information science and information studies stuff. I would like to do a lot more stuff. Someday I'll be motivated and or have time. But I haven't been doing that because it seems like most of the things that I make folks come for, excuse me, are the library side of stuff. Yeah, Megan, actually that's something I want to show you guys about the required viewing. So I've been doing Stacks and Facts for a while. Let me see if I can get screen share up. One of the things that I just love about YouTube is that I have access to wicked analytics, like really, really in depth. So here's the back end of Stacks and Facts, if you're ever curious. And if we go to analytics, I'll show you. Now you know. Here's how Stacks and Facts does. It's very interesting. But reach, I think. And then I'm going to go to the last 365 days. And then I'm going to go to... So these peaks are sometimes when I release videos, but sometimes like somebody shares a video somewhere. And unfortunately, I don't have a great idea of where those things get shared, but here's the good stuff. Okay. So this is a graph showing all of the external links. So not on YouTube. Some of them YouTube, but like the sources of where the views come from. And as you can see, this yellow line is Facebook, but this green line is UH, University of Houston. So I know that, must be the start of the semester because University of Houston just gave me a big spike. Or it's the end of the semester, depending on when they're doing that. But I can go to lifetime. And then let's go through here. So UH, Kent, UBC, Curtin, Emporia, Pressbooks. Ooh, someone has me in a Pressbook. That's fun. So a Pressbook is an ebook that is interactive and it uses the WordPress thing. So as you can see, we've got these little bumps showing when various school years, and like the bumps correspond to when people get to their required reading in their class. But I love it so much, and I would love to meet who the faculty at University of Houston is that is including my stuff in their content, because it's so fascinating. I don't know. Anyways, let's get caught up with them them chats. Librarians do spend a lot of time on Twitter. Like, ooh, yeah, it's very much a mixed bag. I have mixed feelings about Twitter. Twitter's an interesting platform. It does a lot for a lot of people, which is good. But the flip side is, like, Twitter's not a great place for discussion or really in-depth engagement. And I think that's by design. And I don't think that Twitter would be better if it was for in-depth discussion or engagement. But I worry about placing too much value on it as a tool for myself, and how outsized of an impact it might have, or how perceived of an outsized impact it has on culture. So I'm going to put some sushi in my face so I can read the messages some more. I'm getting that link for y'all. Drive. Oh, actually, I can just tell you guys, petermusser.com, because of course it is. If you go to Done and Made on petermusser.com, it's the first link. Doing good research. I'll just do screen share again. Okay, so first, let me just show y'all. This is my website. I'm very proud of it. Originally, I had done it by hand. So like HTML, CSS, all just by hand, and I felt very proud of that. And then I was like, you know what? This is getting real tiring in terms of trying to update it and go through code. So I flipped it to a WordPress because, you know what? There's no shame in doing that. So once you get to petermusser.com, you go to Done and Made. And this is where I have all the presentations and slide decks that I've done, a few of the courses that I put together while I was doing my master's. I taught the Tech in the Core workshops at my grad school. So if you want to brush up on HTML and CSS, you can scope those out, and databases and content management systems, and then some instructional materials that I've put together. But this is the one that I was talking about. So Doing Good Research, a primer on research about YouTube as an educational tool, plus some tips on finding research for free. I felt really good about this. There's dogs going by outside. Hey Vic, calm your tits. She's not gonna calm her tits. It's fine. Hey Vic, come here. She's not gonna come here. Okay, so doing good research. So like I said, this is just a slide deck of some of the research that I found at the time, and the time was 2018, made by love. Or made with love, some of the research that I'd found. And I think a lot of it still is relevant, but I guess one of the things that has changed in my perception is that YouTube has invested somewhat less in the educational side these days. And so it's a little bit harder to really get support from YouTube, I guess, if you want to go and make an educational channel, unless you're really good at what you're doing. But this is actually a pretty decent idea of what instructional design looks like. So I'll just walk you through this real quick, not going through the content. So first thing, always give it a catchy title so that folks can have an idea of what you're going to talk about. Next, you want to introduce yourself. And then you want to do an overview of what's going to be covered more in depth. These are also known as learning outcomes or learning objectives, and you can write them differently. Some people just straight up say learning objectives, and then you do a bullet list of everything that you're reviewing, and then I just get into it. So yeah, look through these. This first one is the big one, the Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. So Richard Mayer, doctor probably, he went and did studies on how the combination of pictures and text, or just pictures or just text, impacted how well a person was able to absorb information. She's being extra. Give me just a second, y'all. I love you, but you're too much. So, yeah. The main takeaways, I guess you could say, are if you're going to use media to help folks learn, make sure that you aren't overwhelming them. And this actually applies in a lot of different ways. It's not just when you're designing educational stuff or any like media. It's like an example that comes to mind for me often is the overwhelming abundance of signage. So at the library, we will put a sign up for everything, and we just like, I feel like we do it kind of as a defense mechanism. It's like, how else are we going to talk to our patrons? So we better put a sign up if anything comes up. And then what ends up happening is you end up having lots and lots of signs, and nobody reads them because they're just like, oh, well, it blends into the background. So keep in mind, just don't bombard people too much with signs. Make sure that you give them information in small bite-sized chunks that they can understand. Make it as accessible as you can by using simple language. And make sure that the audio syncs up with the text. So we don't want to spend too much time on that. Maybe you think it's very fascinating. I think it's very fascinating, but I digress. All right, same with Kent. Yeah, lots of group work. We got someone from Kent. He's invited to Beta Phi Mu. Is that a real honor society? Does it provide anything? Sorry, I don't know if they have that in Canada. I've never heard of Beta Phi Mu. I know when I finished my undergrad, the Golden Key Society contacted me, and I figured why not. And that's for folks who finish in like the top 10% of their class. It has done nothing for me. In the following 7 years, I have had no interactions with the Golden Key Society since graduating. So I feel like if you decide not to do anything with Beta Phi Mu, don't sweat it. You're not really missing out. But I generally have a negative opinion towards Greek life stuff anyways, because the culture that exists in a lot of fraternities and sororities is very toxic and doesn't really, I think, need to exist anymore. But that's neither this nor that. Stan Twitter. Yeah, that's the Twitter that's all about folks named Stan, right? Sorry, I'm shameless. YouTube. I use so much YouTube and online content embedded in my courses, but finding new educational content is getting more challenging. Since I teach political science, there's a lot of weeds. Yeah, Elise. Great question. Also, happy to see you, everybody. Elise is in the chat, and I talked to her last summer about what it's like being a romance novel author. So go have a read if you're curious about that, or have a watch because it was an interview. It was great. Happy to see you. As far as finding good content online in terms of videos, I would recommend, if you get a chance, go over to oercommons.org and have a look and see what they offer there. Sam Mueller. Yeah, right. There is, let's see, let me pick a window to sacrifice. I'll sacrifice the Twitter window, y'all. Yeah, this is just going to become a tutorial of where to find things online. All right, so I said oercommons.org. So oercommons.org is excellent. Let me make myself a little bit smaller. In terms of providing content on a variety of subjects. You can just do a subject search if you wanted. So let's say social science. What was the subject? It was political science. Or since we just do political science, and there's not a ton of stuff, but there's a lot. When we do the search, you'll see that we just get all the things, and then you can filter by the form, media format, set it to video. And all of the stuff here is, or not all of it, but a lot of the stuff on here is licensed CC BY. So Creative Commons is a license that basically encourages folks to reuse their stuff and remix it for free. You just have to be sure to give credit to where you found it and to who the original person was. So yeah, oercommons.org. Great website. I am working on it for one of my contract gigs, and now you know. Happy Pride Month. It is also Juneteenth on June 19th. So it is. Okay. Yeah, Happy Pride Month. Be gay, do crimes. That's my motto. But yeah, if you haven't ever noticed, my name's Peter and I'm super queer. So happy Pride. Remember that Pride started as a protest. There's still tons to protest about. And you know what? I think the Pride Festival, the goal isn't to make it accessible to every straight person out there. So the more racy we can make it, I'm fine with it. Not that we want to exclude anyone, but honestly, it's not for them. And they don't need to feel particularly welcome if they aren't comfortable with various things. And that's my hot take for the night. Now, as for equity, diversity, and inclusion programming and collections, yeah, that's a good thought. I think one thing, a few simple things that you can do. The first thing that comes to mind is whenever you do a display or anything that involves highlighting created works, do your best not just to highlight created works that feature a person of color or a diverse voice on the cover, but make sure that the author themselves is a diverse voice or a person of color. There is a long-standing tradition I have found in children's literature and picture books of very well-meaning white people going and talking at length about cultures that aren't theirs. And maybe it's because they have a deep understanding of the field, because that's what they did their degree in, or they just want there to be more diversity. But like at the end of the day, every picture book out there that is by a white person talking about non-white things takes away from the folks who are not white, who are talking about these things and who are trying to break into the system. And so it takes a bit of work, but I highly recommend that before you, for example, and this is just one thing, it's a very small thing, before you go and you put together a display, make sure you actually check and see who the authors are. And if the authors line up with who, or even the illustrators line up with who's depicted. It's a small thing, but I think it's an important thing. Because, yeah, we can control the market forces, we can influence the market forces by presenting those voices. People will see the books that we present, and they will choose to buy those books if they like them. And that's the only trickle-down effect that I can think of that's useful. Yeah. Also, other things that you can do is you can support, well, I guess in terms of programming and collections, so that deals with collections. As far as programming goes, again, feature minority voices. Make sure, and when you do that, pay them. There has been a big push around EDI efforts, and a lot of folks are like, oh, well, I want to feature black voices, and they can benefit from the exposure. And it's like, well, people die from exposure, as the saying goes. So if you're going to invite someone into the library to talk about something, especially something that may be, I don't know, hard for them or traumatizing or just uncomfortable for them, pay them. If your library system doesn't have a budget for honoraria, so basically payments that you give to presenters, that's an important first step. Because it pulls away from this idea of doing free labor that I think libraries tend to rely on, and like understandably so, right? Because we only have so much money in our budgets. But it also helps show folks that like actually we care about them, and we care about them enough to compensate them for the work that they're doing for us. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can establish that as a norm. Again, like, it just feels very bad to me, I guess, to try and pursue EDI work, but not pay the people who are asking to do that work for us. So pay people. And that's the thing you can do around programming. I guess another thing related to that is, let's keep in mind that there might be people who are very, again, like the books, who are very well-meaning around culture, and they would be happy to come and talk to you about a culture, but it might not be their culture. And you have to start asking yourself, whose voice are you elevating in that situation? Be mindful. If you host panels, so if you, for example, bring multiple speakers, think about what is the makeup of that panel. Are you having 3 or 4 people who look like me? And if so, what does that get you? Like, pause. I'm very charming. And if there were a way to get 3 of me on a panel, you should go for it. But maybe not for every topic. I see a lot when I work in the children's section at one of my branches, like people of color looking at books featuring people of color, specifically children. And so, like, yeah, I think that it has more of an impact than perhaps we think about. So do that. Hopefully that's helpful. Boston College ran a series on fugitivity. They have some recorded workshops that you may find interesting and useful for programming and collections. Megan says, oh, and that was Omegasaurus. Thanks, Omega. Megan says, my library has a purchasing fund dedicated to diverse works. I love it. They allow individuals to submit suggestions for purchase, and anything that fits the bill is purchased and added to the collection. Yeah, also that. One thing that I really like about my library system is that we've done a really big pivot since I got there. Well, before I got there, but since I've been there, a really big pivot to the idea of community-led service. And they've done a really good job, I feel like, of incorporating that in many aspects, including our collection development policy. So my library system has a policy of if a patron asks for a book and it came out in the past 2 years, we just buy it. And we put it on hold for them. No questions asked. We'll do the legwork. We will find out where they want to hold it. But, like, it's a very, very open policy. And given the demographics of my community, it's a very EDI-friendly policy. Now, granted, at the moment, it really only serves folks who use libraries. But when we go out, once again, someday this will happen, when we go out into the community and we have those events where we're talking to community members who maybe don't feel particularly welcome in libraries as spaces because of things like race and socioeconomic status, it's an important talking point that we can bring up to help folks feel like the library isn't just a library for them. It is specifically their library. And they have control and they have agency over what the library's priorities are. I think that's important and that's super valuable and way useful. So, well done, employer. Corey SOA, hello, Patreon supporter. Happy Pride, by the way, to you. And thank you. And just a shout out to all the folks here who are here. I do have a Patreon. So if you have the occasional $1 or $2, or whatever's comfortable for you, feel free to go swing by my Patreon and throw some cash at me. I do feel kind of a couple different ways about it. Like, once upon a time when I first started my Patreon, I was doing videos a lot more often, and I had the time for that. But because I have the Patreon, I feel inclined to do this. And even though I'm not doing as many of videos as I used to, it's still kind of a push to me to engage with folks generally. So thank you. Big thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. Like, money's super helpful, but also it's just that kind of sense of accountability. Yeah. And if you ever want anything, I mean, I answer everyone's questions, but if you're a Patreon supporter, I will answer your question even faster because you're paying me. Pay for labor. And hey, look, it's Kathy. Hello, Kathy. Welcome. Kathy is over in Victoria, and yeah, talk about this weather. It's nice. It's so nice. I got sushi, a nice cold food. Oh, yeah, that one. For those of you just joining us, we're shooting the breeze. And I did say, I think in the promotional materials for this stream, that I want to hear from y'all. Like, now that the pandemic is not over, but it feels like it's drawing to a close, and I want to hear from you. I want to make sure that you're doing okay. So let me know how you're doing. And if you're not doing okay, that's okay. It's very okay to not be okay in the middle of a global catastrophe, especially if you find yourself in the context of like, it feels like a big deal to you, but no one else is treating it that way. Yeah, super valid, super stressful. So, yeah. Shout out to Ironic Sam. Thank you for doing what you do. I always look forward to seeing your comments. You don't leave that many comments, but you have just left one now. And I'm using you as a proxy for everyone who comments. I super appreciate when folks engage with me in any way. Yeah, it feels much more like old school YouTube when people would actually interact with each other. Like, I have definitely become the kind of person where I'm more of a consumer of stuff on the YouTubes without engagement. But it's nice to have that element of community, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. So, Corey, great question around fines. I think fines are absurd. And I think that libraries should get rid of them. And, like, for me, it's very personal. I feel like I touched on this in one of my videos, but I grew up poor. And for those of you who have heard of the ACEs score, or Adverse Childhood Event score, I have a very high number under that. And so my childhood would have been really well served by having a library or library services in my life. And one day, I did. I went to the library once, and I checked something out. And because I was 8 or however old I was, and because I had a lot going on in my life, I took that book home, and I lost it, or I returned it late, or something. Who knows? And then one day, a letter shows up, and I had forgotten about it. But the letter shows up, and it's from a collections agency saying, hey, you owe however much money. And I have no idea what it was. But to me, when I was 8, it felt like $100,000. And like, when you're young and you're poor and you live in a somewhat not great situation, and you're the youngest of 5, you really feel responsible, I guess, for how things go. And I felt really responsible for putting my family in a really tough situation. And because that was how I felt, and because my dad was not super happy when that collections thing came due, I decided at that point, libraries are not for me. I don't get to go there. They are a danger, and it's not worth the risk. And like, yeah, that's my reality. And that's why I think fines are bunk. If someone had just had a conversation with me about why the library was the way it was, or if somebody had given me a chance, or talked to my family, or engaged with my family around what the library does and is good for, that would have been great, and that would have made a world of difference. And that's not what happened. And so now my system has gotten rid of library fines, which is great. But even before that, I was waiving all of the library fines that came my way because I could, and because I knew that that was the impact that it had on me, and I didn't want it to be the same impact on others. So good on you for trying to get your board to do that. A lot of the pushback that we had, or that we experienced after we did it, is a lot of people talk about this idea of like, well, but doesn't it hurt revenue? And the answer is no, not really. Our library never got more than like, I think when we got rid of fines, it was like 5 or 6% of revenue. But like, honestly, it was always on the decline for like the past 20 years. But also it feels gross counting punishment as a source of revenue, especially as one that's reliable. So explaining that, I think, is important. Also explaining that, like, while it might be lost revenue, it's also a huge barrier. It keeps people out of the library, and the library's mission is to serve their communities, the information needs of their communities. And so for as long as those fines exist, there are going to just be people in the community who won't use the library, and that's bad, I think. So Shadeen, thank you very much. I'm glad to hear. Yeah, and as always, to everyone, if you guys have questions, always hit me up. Always happy to answer them. Psychological barrier to access is real. Super. Thank you for sharing. That is very similar to one of my examples. I've given my library's director, my boss. Cool. Do fees even make a dent in the cost of running a library? Not really. The only time that they might make a difference is if a bunch of items are lost. But even then, like, we have to remember that at the end of the day, a library is a place that buys books. And so as tight as budgets are, there will always be more money to buy books. And yeah, so it goes. I guess I should disclaim, though, that my library system does still charge if a book is lost or if a book is damaged, but everything is negotiable. We just have to have that conversation with the patron to understand what's going on, partly because it helps people feel accountable in a way that is not toxic, but it also helps us understand like what went wrong and what can we do to make it better in the future. Yeah. Food, y'all. Oh man, I was so excited for dinner, y'all. Yeah, so one thing I just want to shout out there is I get a lot of viewers and a lot of subscribers and a lot of folks who reach out who are people of color, and I super appreciate that. Because, yeah, I talked about this in a video before about how, like, librarianship isn't particularly friendly to people of color. It's actually quite exclusionary to it. Or it can be. Your mileage may vary, but statistically speaking, a lot of people who are people of color and who are black just don't have a great experience in libraries. And so, for me, I do everything that I can, and this is an open invitation, but I do everything that I can to support folks who are people of color and folks who are black, whether that's answering questions, providing guidance, and I do my best to make a special effort to do that. And so if you are listening to me now, I want you to know that I have an open door policy for you. I want this profession to be a better place for you than it is right now. And I just feel like that's something that we need to say out loud. It doesn't, like, a lot of people talk about it, and I don't know how often folks follow through. So try me. I dare ya, in the nicest way. On that note, if you do only have a little bit of money and you want to support someone around that issue, particularly in librarianship, ALA has a thing called Spectrum, which is a scholarship that goes to library students of color, and then there's also the Black Caucus of the ALA, who I strongly recommend supporting, or if you are black, joining. The idea of collective action leading to positive results is real, and we see that in terms of unions, and we see that in terms of some organizations. I know that the ALA is somewhat fraught with how much success or not that they've had with that. And that's one of the reasons that I, to this day, have not joined the ALA. I'm waiting for them to do things better. And I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but until that happens, I don't feel great about giving them my money. But throw money at those particular causes, by all means, and get in touch with them and see if there's something that they can do to help you. Also, I just read about this is one thing that Twitter's nice for. If you are a black, indigenous, or person of color person in librarianship, there is a green book for you that floated up on Twitter. And let's see if I can find that. So the idea is that it's related to the old green books of the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the US, where, like, they were motor books, basically. A guidebook that explains what places are safe for black people to go to and what places aren't, so that when they go traveling, they can find somewhere that's safe to spend time at. But let's see, what is it called? Library Green Book. The way that that's playing out with libraries is it's giving folks who are in librarianship, who are Black and who are people of color, an idea of which workplaces are friendly and which places are not. Library and Green Book. I might have to do a search of it in Twitter. Oh, no, here it is. Green Book for libraries. So, Green Book for libraries. Let's just make this big for a second. Swoop. All right. So, librarygreenbook.com. So if you are currently in the market for a job, or if you want to get a feel for what it's like, and you aren't quite sold on libraries yet, this is what you can find. Have a look. Again, librarygreenbook.com. I'm not Black, I'm not Indigenous, I'm not a person of color, so this isn't for me, but it's for you, and I want to make sure that you knew that it exists. Yeah, that's all. Minor segue. While we are checking things, yes, happy Pride Month, y'all. Again, for those of you just joining us, I'm super gay. I'm very queer. And I support everyone regardless of their orientation, but this is our month. You can do what you want. Oh, I forgot to make the window big. We're just looking at stats. Don't mind me. Bloop. All right. Okay. I've asked via Twitter before about oversaturation in librarianship in Canada, and I mentioned about it a bit. Yeah. So, oversaturation in librarianship, not just in Canada, but all over North America, is it's a thing. And it's tricky, right? Because, like, everybody wants to become a librarian. Not everybody, but like a lot of people want to become librarians. And so they go and they get their MLIS, but the jobs aren't necessarily there. That is to say, there are jobs, but if you want one, you probably have to relocate. And that's the same in Canada and the US. If you're willing to relocate somewhere, you can probably get a job. And that is just the reality of it. If you have experience in libraries before, you're more likely to be able to get a job than if you come out of library school without any experience, which is why I've started really pushing folks to get that experience. What else that's relevant? I personally have been struggling with it. So because of the pandemic, a lot of my opportunities at work to do special anything have diminished. And so now I'm just kind of a part-time librarian that just does reference desk stuff. And that's a useful experience to a point, but I don't have anything big that goes to my name. And I have been worrying since the pandemic happened that because I was kind of complacent and because I decided to stick with that part-time job for as long as I have, it has really shot my chances in the foot in terms of getting employment somewhere else, somewhere more stable, somewhere more permanent, and somewhere with more responsibilities. And I did a very baby thread on that. I alluded to that on Twitter because it's been a very large mental stress thing for me lately, and trying to figure out how to deal with that. I'm working on it. So that's the reality of the situation. Like, if you want to be a librarian, you're just going to have to come to terms with the fact that there are more librarians than there are jobs. And that's why it's important. And that's why a lot of schools have been pushing folks like, hey, if you get an MLIS, don't just look at libraries for jobs. And like, it can feel ungratifying, but like, who knows? Maybe you're going to find out that doing data management is your thing, or records management, or maybe community organizing is your thing. Like the MLIS, I will say this until I am blue in the face, but more likely I'll be red in the face because it's warm. The MLIS is more than just a degree for librarians. and it lets you do more than just become a librarian. And I know a lot of people who get it don't want to think about that, but that is the truth. And you deserve to be respected by the profession that you end up in. And if librarianship isn't doing that for you, then maybe librarianship doesn't deserve you. So it goes. It can be super disappointing, but so we go. All right, comments. Tyler is on the East Coast and has an interview tomorrow. Excellent. Good luck, buddy. I still have a lesson plan to write. Oh, yeah. Well, good luck. I hope you heard that before you ran off, but everyone... let's cheer for him. Woo! Daniel says, or Danielle, depending on where you're from, hey, Stacks, I'm sorry to hear that you've had trouble with pandemic at all. Aw, well, thanks. Oh, you're doing your PhD at UBC. Awesome. Hey, cool. Yeah. If I can answer any questions, let me know. I had entertained doing a PhD while I was doing my MLIS at UBC. Oh, are you talking about in... Yes, maybe you are. If you're talking about doing a PhD in information science, let me know. Happy to chat, and also happy to put you in contact with other folks who are currently or have done recently that degree. Yeah, it seems like a really cool program. And I'm still, like, part of me still wants to go and do my PhD, but, like, and I hope this doesn't frighten you, but the takeaway that I got when I talked to our PhD students was that everyone just seems so tired. And like, I love sleep, and I don't know if they were tired because they weren't getting enough sleep, but it concerned me, and so my priorities lie where they lie, and that's just who I am. But yeah, it's really good to hear that you're coming out. I've had a few folks, and I'm going to tell you all a story, actually, as I pull up my second course of dinner. So, if you go back and look at my videos, I started Stacks and Facts in 2017, I think, which was it was right in the summer between my first and second year of my MLIS. And for context, I took about 2.5 years to do my MLIS because I want to do lots of things. And it was fun. It was like, I really enjoyed doing my degree. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but I did. But in 2018, when the fall term of 2018 was starting, one of these guys came up to me because I went to the student orientation, because I was also involved in student government because I commit to doing too many things. But after the orientation, he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Peter," and I'm like, "Hi." And he's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I saw your channel on YouTube, and I thought it was really great." And I was like, "Oh, hey, thanks. That means a lot. That's really kind of you to say." And he says, "Yeah, it was actually what made me decide to go get my MLIS." And I was like, "Oh, great." And that was the moment that I realized that I'm impacting other people's lives, which is like a really cool thought, and also mortifying to a degree. Like, by all means, I want everyone to tell me that I'm the reason they're doing anything. Great for the ego, but like, that's a really big decision for people to make. And to think that I influence that is very humbling, I guess I mean to get at. Yeah. Okay. So let's back to the chat. Megan says that brings up a good question. How do you feel about doing a PhD in library and information science? What sort of opportunities does it open up? Yeah. So that's actually a really great question. There's like 3 things that you can do with a PhD in library/information science. I'm eating to give myself time to think. Oh, these are really good. The first thing, and I think the reason that I wanted to do it when I was considering it, is I wanted to teach. I really enjoy teaching. And I'm sorry that I keep saying this, but UBC was great. And they did pay me, but this is not a sponsored video. I got a scholarship out of doing my degree there and various other things. But UBC was really great. And my time at UBC was really great. And the folks that I worked with, because I did teach while I was there, just workshops, but I still taught. It counts. Fight me. That was really fun and that was really gratifying. And the professors there were just super approachable and super, super great. And I wanted to be their colleagues. And so I considered it. And I thought about it and I did all of my research over like 6 or 7 months. I talked to all of the PhDs. I talked to the folks that I was considering to be my advisors. I did some more research and ultimately I decided not to. But if I did a PhD, it would be to do that. The tricky thing though is that if you do at least at UBC, the policy is UBC won't hire their own. So if you do your PhD in Library and Information Science at University of British Columbia, you will not become a professor of any flavor at University of British Columbia's iSchool. Which, like, you know, will put a damper on things. So that's one thing, is you can teach with a PhD. You can also do research, of course. Some folks get a PhD and then they go on and do postdoc things, and they just research things, and they get they'll be a professor, but mainly because they want to do research, and then they'll fill their teaching obligations maybe with 1 or 2 classes per term. But the teachers at UBC, a lot of them did research as well as taught. And I think that there's just a lot of really fascinating stuff to learn about when it comes to libraries and information science. The other thing with a PhD in library and information science is, for whatever reason, university libraries seem to really be keen on hiring folks with LAS PhDs. And I wonder about that. I don't think it's bad. Like, the library school, or the library directors that I've met have been very lovely people, and they deserve the positions that they're in. But I find that fascinating. It's just an interesting observation. Yeah. So then the other thing that you can do, and the other thing that I would have considered doing a PhD for, was to go and work in the private sector. So somewhere like YouTube, or somewhere like Google, or, Microsoft, the federal government, research council. Oh boy, I ate too fast. Research councils, all of these different organizations that aren't universities and that aren't libraries, they will hire PhDs to do research and to help them plan. And with library and information science, that can be, the crows here are a little wild, that can be interface design, that can be user testing, that can be, what else? Information design. It can be things like community archives, understanding how those work. There's a lot of things you can do, and I can't think of a lot of them right now, but just trust me, there are a lot of things you can do. Yeah, so those are the 3 main things, is you can teach, you can do research in academia, like continue doing that, or you can go into the private sector and do more research. It depends on kind of what you want to do with it, though. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Megan, I see you, and I've thought about that too. Because the market, or at least because I've had challenges getting more permanent work up here in Canada lately, I have strongly been considering moving back to the US. My partner and I have been talking about that at length. And one of the reasons is, so because I was in the Navy and because I have a disability from that, I get hiring preference when I apply to government jobs. Also, I still have a little bit of a retirement saved up with the federal government. And so I have been applying for jobs in the US, hoping that something pans out. I'm not super sure that I want to leave Canada because, like, y'all, the healthcare, the general concern for your fellow person, the weather right now anyways, it's all pretty good stuff. But, like, the flip side of that is, if I want to stay in Canada, uh, I would have to leave. Like, we're probably gonna have to leave Vancouver anyways. The city is wildly unaffordable, and as nice as it is, like I'm getting to the age where it's becoming more disconcerting to me that I don't own a house, and in this town that's not ever going to be a possibility, which is frustrating, you know. Whereas in the U.S., like, there are things I can do to buy a house, like, immediately upon getting a job. So, yeah, we'll see. But if we do all of that to say, if we do move to the US, I too would like to do some substitute teaching. Here in Canada, I don't know what the requirements are for subs, but they're a little bit more strict. Yeah, I don't know. Yes. Omega is correct. You can teach with an MLAS. So at a lot of academic universities, a lot of universities, when you have an MLAS and you do tenure track, you will often teach like research skills courses, sometimes workshops. When you go and you look through the jobs that are out there, it'll be like reference and instruction, or it'll be scholarly columns and instruction, librarians. And instruction tends to be quite a large portion of that job, and some curriculum development. And that's why, if you can take a course during your grad studies on pedagogy, so the art of teaching, or the study of teaching, you should do so. There are some organizations out there that teach those skills outside of academia, and your mileage may vary with that, but it never hurts if you have the money and the time, in terms of making yourself more employable. As far as specializations or concentrations, I don't know. I have not. So when I did my master's, I had a dual specialization in data services and information design and something else. But I haven't really been declaring those. Like, it shows up because it's not like an official formal specialization. So my program has things called pathways. And the pathways, basically, they list like the main electives that you would take to match that pathway, and then they list a bunch of secondary electives. And so even though it isn't like official, you could conceivably say, when I went to University of British Columbia and did my MLAS, my specialization was in this thing. And I haven't been proclaiming that, but I have started thinking that I should, maybe. And so I'm going to put it as a little byline on my CV under my master's so that people can see, oh, well, there's that. And I don't know if it'll make a difference. We'll see. But I figure it doesn't hurt. And it never hurts to give, I think, your education more context in terms of letting people really understand what you did when you did your master's. Yeah, quite a few. Yeah. So, I have nothing against trying to think of how to frame this in the least offensive way. Well, it's Pride Month. And as I have continued to say, and I will continue to say it forevermore until I'm dead, I'm queer. And we were talking about this in my school's alumni Facebook page, because it's actually a pretty cool place. Someone posted a big picture of a map of the US with the locations of library schools highlighted, and suggesting that, oh, look at all of these states that don't have library schools, and what a great gig it must be or how easy it must be to get a job there. And it's like, well, your mileage may vary. Like, yes, there might be fewer candidates applying for those positions, but like also sometimes people don't want to live in those places for reasons. I have personal safety concerns about parts of the country. And while I could blend in well enough, like the experience of being a queer person or a person of color in this same situation, not all of them, but in the same situation, is the ability and the necessity to be able to code switch. I can change how I act and I can change what I say, and I can change my demeanor, and I can pass as straight, and that would help with safety things. But I don't want to do that. And that's unfortunate from a job perspective thing. But it is a reality. It is what it is. And so that influences a little bit about where I look for jobs. And like, I don't mean to say this, I don't mean it to sound like I'm saying like everybody in this part of the country is bad or this part of the country is homophobic or any of that. It's just like there gets to be a point in one person's life when they are just tired of doing the work, you know? As things get more, I don't want to say desperate, but as I become more unemployed, I guess, I do think a little bit more about, should I just suck it up? Because like the reality is, I know that anywhere I can go, I will find a community of queers, and we will make it work. We will be there for each other, and who knows, maybe I can bring something from the big city that is helpful to folks. Lord knows I won't shut up about it. So at least in that realm of advocacy, I can do that. But yeah, it's a hard decision to make about in terms of where one wants to look for jobs. And I will just flat out say, like, there are jobs in parts of the country that have looked excellent on paper, and yet the mental calculus of how that will play out in the rest of my life doesn't always come out great. So, and it's a similar thing for people of color. And that's just reality. So let's see what these comments say after that. Okay, so if you have any advice on finding rentals in Vancouver for students, that's always welcome. Craigslist, check the Vancouver's Craigslist. There's also another site up here. I don't know where you're coming from, but in Canada, at least in BC, there's another site called Kijiji, which is KIJIJI .ca, and they do a lot of rentals for housing there as well. If you move to Vancouver, a basement suite, I live in a basement suite. The ceilings are low, but it's affordable, so consider that. It's affordable by Vancouver standards, I should say. Terminal 281 asks, do I think Fahrenheit 451 is still symbolic nightmare against library job security, or that biblioclasm means something different with the internet? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna not pretend to be smarter than I am and admit that I have not read Fahrenheit 451 since high school. I don't think that we have to worry about society getting to the point where books just go away, or that people actively destroy books. Asterisk. But I'm not worried about it. I think libraries have a lot of job security as institutions. People will always say the library is dying, and they're always going to be wrong, because although slow, libraries have been adapting to the changing information landscape. They haven't been doing it quickly. Sometimes they haven't been doing it successfully, but they have been doing it. Can you speak on conferences and publications for newer aspiring librarians? Yes, actually, I can, Omegasaurus. Thank you for asking. I'm just going to share my screen again real quick, because this is on the Twitter somewhere. It is I'm trying to think of the name. I want to say it's the Emerging Librarians. Oh, don't mind that. Oh, don't look, y'all, that's peripherally private. Okay. So, Twitter, the new early career librarian conference. Where was it? OpenCon is really good, but it hasn't gone for a couple of years, so that's not helpful. There is who's organizing it? Let's see. Mid-career live. you got me this way. There's a conference that's coming up that I'm not going to because I've sworn off conferences for a little while. That's specifically for early career librarians. And I can't think of the title, but I feel like it was very close to that. Early career librarian. Anyways, if I think of it, if you tag me on Twitter, I'll look some more tonight, and I'll see if I can find it for you, and I'll tweet the link out. But yes, that is a resource. Otherwise, let me go back and make sure I see that question. Conferences and publications for newer aspiring librarians. Publications in the library with the lead pipe. I always recommend that. It's another publication of like, yeah, librarianship actually isn't great, and here's some ways to understand that. To help really pull the blinders off of people from what the profession is believed to be, so that people can see what it actually is, warts and all. Other than that, nothing else comes to mind at the moment, but if that changes, I'll let you know. I completely agree with you about being queer. My wife and I live in the Bay Area, and I feel safe here. It's expensive, and we would like to live somewhere else, but safety is a big concern. Yes. Yeah, and so that's one of those things where it makes it hard to decide whether we want to move out of Vancouver, because like even in Vancouver, BC, like it's not San Francisco, but in a lot of ways it's a lot better. If we even just go like an hour east, we get into a rural part that is not as friendly to us, to our folk, and that stinks. So we'll see what happens. Terminal 281 is someone on the autistic spectrum. I think I get it about code switching. Yeah, I think you probably do too. It's one of those things where like you can be yourself, but like you have to change how you present yourself to be accepted by others. Code switching often gets a lot more talk about it in the context of racial studies, because it's a lot more common to see someone like talking about like from when they come from their own culture or their own families and they go into the world at large. They code switch so that the masses are kinder to them or treat them with somewhat more fairness or don't look at them as if they are the other. So that's what code switching is. And I totally would see that as someone who falls on the spectrum. Yeah. I can totally understand not wanting to code speak or pass. I'm not an individual who identifies as LGBT, but that is very valid. Thank you. It's nice to know that I'm not the only one who thinks about the need to relocate for employment as an obstacle since I am trans. Yes. And, you know, that's a whole other element to it, right? Because depending on where you go, if you're trans, that, of course, comes with different healthcare requirements. Or it can, potentially, depending on if you decide you want to transition or what have you. And I'm not telling this to you because you know, but just for others to have that perspective. Like, having to move for your job is a big stressful thing. And if that's, like, if you can do it, more power to you, but not everybody can do that. So just keep that in mind for when you become a library director, and you're trying to think, gosh, how can I attract diverse talent from a variety of places so that I can benefit from having a variety of lived experience in our walls? Make sure that your place of employment treats people kindly and broadcasts that they care about people. That's all. Let's see. Yeah, I would... Yeah, and it's so frustrating, right? Because, like, I've driven through places in the South, and I know that, like, Alabama's gorgeous. Huntsville is a really cool place. Austin is really cool. A lot of Texas is, like, a really cool-looking place with a lot of stuff going on. And, like, at the same time, I don't want to have to stress about my safety. I don't want to have to stress about healthcare. For me, that's less of a deal, because... since I'm a disabled veteran, I get my healthcare through the VA, but my partner is not. And coming from Canada, like that's a discussion that she and I have had to have is if we move to Texas, or if we move anywhere in the US, it has to be somewhere where she gets healthcare, because she has conditions that require regular interactions with the healthcare system, without giving away too much about her, because everyone deserves their privacy. So yeah, we'll see. As time goes on, maybe it'll be a choice we make. But if you work at a library and you want to hire me, let me know. I'm available. I'm a free agent. Yes. Omegasaurus Lawrence talking about how all of this is pushing us into places that are not necessarily safe. It stinks. It sucks. I don't know if you filtered that terminal. If you did, that's fine. I'm not making fun of you. I wasn't expecting to see that, but it sucks how around Victoria Day, Hamilton became the third most expensive place on the continent to live. Number 2, Toronto, number 1, Vancouver. Yeah. Even the places that used to be affordable, like that's been just a crazy thing around being in Canada is housing is so bad, y'all. So bad. Even renting, like, and it's such a big place, and I'm waiting to see, like, well, maybe we're gonna start having cities out in the prairies become bigger, but like I don't want to deal with black flies. I've heard about them. I don't want those in my life. Megan says that they went to a private liberal arts college, which was located in a rural pocket that is surprisingly quite diverse-friendly. Open-minded communities do exist. They do. And, like, credit where it's due, places like Austin exist. I can think of Austin, for example, is a great place. Missoula, Montana, wonderful. Let's see. The town that I grew up in was rural and fairly conservative. But if you went further into the hills, there was this little place called Grass Valley in Nevada City. And those were like pretty hippy-dippy and like not great from a diversity point of view, but like folks were nice. And so like the pockets do exist. It's just tricky trying to find them and vet them without living there. Like unless it's somewhere like Austin or Missoula. I guess like the correlation you can make is like if there's a university, it's probably going to be a little bit friendlier. And yes, to a point. But then the flip side to that is, I know recently Missoula, home of DFTBA, and Complexly, Google it. Missoula's gotten stupidly expensive. Like, I've thought about picking up and moving out there, and then I can hang out with Lindsay, although now she lives in Mexico half the time of the year. But, like, I know people there, and I can make it work, but, like, I can't, because Missoula's wild now. Yeah. Y'all, I feel like this is some real millennial venting. We're really channeling the gestalt, the zeitgeist of our era. Way to go, us. Let's see if we can kill this. Millennials, we're good at killing things, right? It's fine. That's an angry face. Was oil money the only reason why Calgary avoided becoming so expensive? Probably. Oh man, Calgary. So my partner has family in just outside of Calgary, and it would be like we wouldn't mind being closer to our family, but like we also don't want to live like that's where she grew up, and she knows how like conservative and gross it can get there. So it's not really an option at this point, which is a shame. Yeah. There are also a few job openings in near Cleveland. Cleveland's pretty cool. You know, Cleveland, the Sox, they have a baseball team, I think. In a perfect world, I could live near Chicago. Chicago's such a great city, y'all. I love it. Library 2.0 is a pretty good one. What's Library 2.0? You have to explain that. Rivarian. I'm trying to define a taxonomy/standard vocabulary at my job for our products. I've been skimming through the discipline of organizing by Glishko. Any other recommendations? Do we still have a cataloger? Megan, do you have any ideas on that? We were just talking about earlier how I don't catalog very much. I do a little bit of metadata standards, but like that's a lot of that is contract work. And I don't have readings that I would do it, like base it on. It's just for my own experience. So if you want pointers like that, I can give you something, but I can't give you readings, sorry. Okay. Daniel, all right. So you did filter that word. Good to know. I thought that YouTube just decided to filter sucks as a word because YouTube is just... I wouldn't put it past them to do something like that without telling anyone. That'll be a rant for another day. Hamilton native here. Part of the problem is that the average wage is terrible here. Not that the cost of rent is higher than a lot of other major American cities. Yeah. That's been an issue in Vancouver as well, is that wages have always been lower than Toronto, and lower than other places where the cost of living is what it is here. And so, like, my understanding, having only moved to Vancouver back in 2016, and for folks who don't live in Canada and don't care about this, it's fine. I'm sorry. The rant will be over soon. Vancouver, like 10, 15 years ago, was like peripherally affordable. But like Vancouver's landlocked, or waterlocked, I guess you could say, on three sides, because there's the river on the bottom. And so lots of people want to move to Vancouver, but there's not the housing for it. And then Vancouver suffers from NIMBYism, which for those who don't know, NIMBY stands for not in my backyard. Lots of folks who own single family occupancy homes who maybe like the idea of increasing density, but they don't want it to be where they live because they don't want it to ruin the safety or the ambiance or whatever. And so because of that, Vancouver housing, whether it's rental or purchase, is just getting more and more expensive. Like, we live in a 1.5 bedroom apartment, and it's not even an apartment, it's the basement of a house, and we pay $1,500 a month for it. If we wanted the main floor, it would have been like $2,400 or $2,500. It's absurd, and that's the norm. And so it's pushing people to the east where there's more land into the suburbs. But now, because there's so many people that want to come to Metro Vancouver, the greater Vancouver area, like, housing prices just keep going up. And they're doing it really quick because nobody wants to build housing. And then when they do build housing, it ends up being like a giant condo that has like 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, which isn't useful if you don't have the money to afford that, or if you want a family or anything like that. I'm not frustrated. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm perfectly calm with all of this. This chat's really picking up. I love it, y'all. Is Missoula cool because Hank started a mini YouTube renaissance in the area? Yes, that is exactly it. But Missoula's also cool. Like, they've got a university. They've got a lot of natural scenery. The wildfire season's a little rough because Missoula's in a basin. And so when it gets smoky, the smoke just sits and it lingers. And it's gross. But there's a nice river. So when it gets hot, and they have a great farmer's market and all that stuff. They actually, Missoula, speaking about libraries, just built a new library. The city financed a brand new library branch, and apparently it's quite nice. I haven't been yet because the border has closed, but someday I shall head down there and check it out. Cleveland would be good for healthcare. The Cleveland Clinic is a great place. I have a trans friend who is in the process of transitioning, who lives in Cleveland, who doesn't have an issue with healthcare. Excellent. Yeah, when I was still in California, I had a partner who was trans, and she... amazingly, I'm so happy that she did it. She was underemployed, and so she got the state provided benefits to take care of a lot of her healthcare issues, including some around transitioning, which was just love it. So there are like good places for it. It's just not all places. We're working on it though. Praise be society. DFTBA. DFTBA. Bockelman. Who's Bockelman? I don't see someone named Bockelman. Anyways, it's fine. D. Riverian. Where did it go? Any cataloging pointers you would have would be cool. Okay, I'll think about that. I'll get back to you, unless I forget. I live in the DC area. Expensive? Yeah. I have applied for many jobs in the DC area. I know that DC itself is stupid. But like, I could live southeast of it. There's the National Defense University that I've applied for jobs at. That would be nice to get. And then it's fairly close to the train. And like, it's not cheap, but we could get an apartment, like a 2-bedroom, for something that I could afford based on the wages I would be earning. So yeah. white majority populaces need to accept how their own fertility rates are low, no shame in that, for labor-relevant populations to sustain things, hence need to diminish prejudices to share. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on around that. Terminal, that's part of the phenomenon. But I think it's more like the idea of Hamilton being a feeder city is more promising than the actual amount of young families here. I have a feeling the housing market will crash. Lots of developments here aren't going to be filled out, but maybe I'm wrong. I feel super guilty about it, y'all, but like, because of everything that we've been talking about, I dream of the Canadian housing market just crumbling one day. Like, can you imagine how great it would be to like live in somewhere like Vancouver or Hamilton or Toronto and like afford where you live, and not because you make stupid amounts of money that you had to compromise your morals for? Wouldn't that be nice? I would love that. I want that for us. I want that for you and me. Let's make that happen. How do we make that market crash? How do we get Jesus to take that particular wheel? Let me know in the comments below. The housing market, yeah, okay. At least Dublin Core can give you an example of how a simple metadata scheme has been created and then later built upon. Yes. Also, I mean, depending on what your priorities are for your business, this is going to the metadata standards. See what other folks, if you can find examples of what other folks are doing. Like, I don't know the nature of your project, but I worked for BC Housing right out of grad school to help them build a digital library. And we used Dublin Core because it made, like, the idea was that we were future-proofing it. Like, it was still very proof of concept by the time I left. But we wanted to use Dublin Core, and then we aligned it with what the local universities were doing because we wanted to make the digital library that we were building be interoperable with them if that was something that they decided to do. So if there's any organizations that you want to be interoperable with, reach out to them, see what they're doing, see if you can line up with them. And maybe if they don't have a librarian already on hand, or someone with experience, you can maybe say, hey, I would be happy to do that, because it's all about the side hustle these days, y'all. Things among immigrants who will try to not look. $1,500 a month. Yeah, $1,500 a month. Aaron, don't come up here unless you're rich. Then come up here and love me. Not a bad deal, relatively speaking. I'm so scared of apartment hunting. Yeah, you'll figure it out. Well, Daniel, are you coming with family or is it just you? Because if it's just you, you can probably get a room to rent. That's actually a very common thing here, for at least the first few months. And then if you haven't already, apply for on-campus housing. It's great. The graduate students have access to some really nice dorms. I lived in a really long, like a big studio apartment, and it was like $1,300 a month, I want to say. It was great though. I lived on campus, and UBC as a campus is gorgeous and has a lot of really great amenities. So apply for housing if you haven't. The process is very long, but you should get it. I loved it. Now you know. I'm surprised I didn't think of that sooner. It's been a while, y'all. Let's see. New York is hopefully turning its office building bubble into affordable housing, but hard saying. Yeah. Really enjoying the Commons podcast, Real Estate, about Canadian real estate. We will have to have a listen. Peter, do you see banana slugs at times when it rains? I do if I go into parks. Yeah, so in fact, so right now I live on the east side of Vancouver. UBC is on the west side of Vancouver. And it's separated from the rest of Vancouver by Pacific Spirit Park, which is a very nice park. Lots of biking trails. I would bike through it before I moved on to campus. And it was great. And there are lots of banana slugs out there, and they are just the cutest things, but do not lick them. That is gross. Bachman. Oh, hey, look, there's your... Okay. I didn't even think of looking at last names. It's fine. I want a house someday. I just want a house someday, too. So the queer polyamorous dream is to start a commune, and every day it just becomes a little bit more appealing. You know, you and your 5 closest friends get together and buy a bunch of tiny houses on a plot of land, and you all pay the mortgage together, and you all have your own space, but then you have a common area for when you need to do, like, I don't know, dance parties, and no one bothers you because you've got you and your 5 closest friends and your partners. And yeah, someday, y'all, secret queer powers. Okay. Did a nice video on housing crisis. Yeah, Abby did an excellent one talking about housing broadly, and the weird perils of being a landlord. Not perils isn't the right word, because there's risk with being a landlord, but like the risk is the same as any other investment, except less, because anyways, become a socialist and go watch Abby's channel, PhilosophyTube, and then also the rest of BreadTube if that's something you're interested in. Good stuff. Did apply. Oh, good. Yeah, you'll be waitlisted for a while. I was waitlisted for 6 months. Was it 6 months? Actually, only for... So I applied a little late, and then I moved up here into an apartment in July, and then the first offer that I received for housing on campus was in December, but I had signed a lease, like a 12-month lease, and I couldn't get out of it because I wasn't expecting to actually get on campus housing. So I turned it down, and I think you can do that 2, maybe 3 times. So I turned it down, and then they re-offered me again in May, and I still had a couple months, but I ended up paying double rent and burning through my savings. But in the long run, it was totally worth it, because the place I was staying at was a lot cheaper, because I was renting a room in a house with a bunch of people rather than an entire place. Capital has no borders and can move wherever it wants, but labor is prevented from doing so by the existence of borders. Yeah. Were you planning on taste testing the banana slugs? It's always saddened me to see worms and snails struggle and or be crushed after it rains. Right? Where I live now, I'll just give you a nice view. It's not too bad now that the weather's nice. So that's the view from where I'm sitting. That's our front garden. And when it rains, all of the little snails come out from the little green area and they start climbing across the path. And up there, that's where my bird friends hang out. But yeah, I feel ya. And so if we see a snail, we'll pick them up and we'll relocate them into the greens, and same with the poor earthworms. Because, yeah, we don't want to see them die. We're all big softies. It's fine. It's true. Banana slugs are huge. 180th in line. Oh, that's not too bad. I think that's great. I think you'll have housing sooner than you expect. Yeah. Home ownership is sci-fi. That is... Yeah, that feels accurate. That feels accurate. But, someday we're going to have that great proletariat revolution, and we will all just have home taken care of. No, I'm just kidding. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to finish one more pot sticker real quick, y'all. Otherwise, so we have some more new folks in the chat. If you haven't already, let me know how you're doing with this whole pandemic thing, because I care about you, and it helps me not think about myself. Actually, so while we wait for the chat to get caught up with that, one thing I've been thinking about is, so during my master's, I took a class called Digital Libraries. And the class was about digital libraries and the standards that they use, and how to put together one. And I've been thinking, like, it would be cool to put together a digital archive where anyone, whoever wants to, can submit something to a digital archive about what their experience during the pandemic has been like. And I think that it would be fun. I don't know how I could make it sustainable, but I would really like to do that. Because I think that we're in a weird time, and I hope that time passes soon. But I think, like, it would be helpful for folks in the future to see how we coped or not, and what we actually went through. when the pandemic first happened, the first thing I did after I got laid off, I should say, is I went over to UBC's Institutional repository, their open collections, where they have all the digitized materials ever. And I went looking for people talking about what it was like in the Spanish flu pandemic. Because I was like, how do people manage this? And I was surprised because like I found a lot of newspaper clippings, or not clippings because they were virtual, but newspaper articles and like editorials talking about it. And like it was kind of disheartening to read as many obituaries as I did, but I didn't find a lot of stuff of substance. And like, I think that it would be cool to do something to address that for this go round. And you know, it could be an interesting research angle, like to see what people think is worth preserving. The idea of community archives, I think, always fascinates me, but I don't know if there's demand for that, and I'm not sure how to select for that. I know that there are a few libraries that are doing that. I think Santa Rosa Public Library in California has started doing a community archive around the pandemic, which is great. But yeah, just thoughts I've had. Thoughts that you have after you complete an MLIS and are laid off because there's a pandemic tearing through the world. Daniel, unfortunately, I don't know. What I do know is you can sign a lease and then the landlord, according to BC tenancy laws, they can't obstruct you from finding someone to take over your tenancy. If that makes sense. So if you decide that you need to move, you're still on the lease, but you can find someone to take over it for you. And once you do, like, the landlord can't do anything about that. And the Residential Tenancy Board, the RTB here in Vancouver, is pretty strong, and pretty tenant friendly. So I wouldn't sweat it too much. Yeah. But if you're 180, you have good odds. I guess it depends on when you get here. I imagine some folks will get some housing offers in the summer, but I think the competition's going to be a little bit less, because the borders still haven't quite opened up to international students yet. But we'll see. Definitely stopped and waited for them to cross the road. Oh, frogs. Yep. Mm-hmm. An arguably less intense bread tuber once did a conservative cases for UBI, which was amusing. Mm-hmm. Tried to say how a bookmobile driver used to work. Mm-hmm. Mostly just swerve around. Oh, little froggies. Which is ridiculous. Oh. I used to work, said inflammatory. Pandemic discussion now, eh? I've been okay. Good. Very fortunate not to have been laid off. Good. No, work increased. Good. The frogs. Yeah, regarding vaccination, I got a shot. I got shot number 1 3 weeks ago, and then it was right here. You can see... No, I'm just kidding. You can't see it because it was so long ago. The province of British Columbia is looking to start doing second vaccinations 9 weeks after the first, which they have found from them doing that in the UK to be quite beneficial, actually, quite useful. Doesn't harm effectiveness or efficacy at all. Hi.
Hi.
Everybody, look who's home.
Hi.
I was telling them about how you stayed late so that you could build your stuff.
Yeah, later than I should have for my body.
You know, a pot sticker?
Yeah.
It's got vegetables in it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
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 Stayed too long, but I got lots done.
Excellent. She got lots done. As God intended.
Mwah.
Yeah, so vaccines are coming along. got the first one, feeling great, haven't gotten sick. It was free because we're in Canada. I mean, I guess it's been free everywhere, but it was free and like fairly well organized because we're in Canada. And the second one will be free and fairly well organized because we're in Canada. So, yeah. I've had both shots. Yes. My house now fully
Would I
back.
be overfeeding the dog if I gave her dinner?
No. Yeah, congrats to everybody who's fully vaccinated. That is very exciting. I think we're all looking forward to that day. Yeah, fully vaccinated. My mom is partially vaccinated. My brother and dad are not planning to be vaccinated. I don't always. Yeah, no, I feel ya. It's a weird time, y'all. Like, I have a coworker who they are also vaccine hesitant. And we had a brief talk about it. And I am sympathetic to their concerns, and also I find it very hard to reconcile in my brain. Like, we'll leave that at that. People have their reasons. I don't agree with a lot of them. But, like, I think right now I'll take the win of folks not actively trying to get other people to not get vaccinated when they themselves don't want to get vaccinated. If they, you know, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. When it comes to housing revolution, I've always gotten vibes of violent revolution in the opening intro music and dioramas for the pirate show Black Sails. I am not familiar with this Black Sails show, but I enjoy a good pirate every now and then. Y'all, this has been a long stream. I think possibly the longest stream I've done. I was only going to be here for an hour, but you know what? Because it's you. Yeah. So the takeaways I've gotten from this are housing sucks everywhere. Maybe I should consider doing a Discord. What else? What other takeaways? What should I be taking away from this stream, y'all? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to take home with me? Also, I'm gonna just quickly copy the link and see if anyone's been leaving like comments, because I know there's the chat, but I don't know how. I don't ever like do live stream. Like, I don't ever watch live streams on YouTube, so I don't know. What do you want me to know? What do you want me to take home with me? Or the comment, but it looks like it's not. Good to know. Okay, we're gonna close that. But yeah, so Discord, library school, everybody's stressed but feeling somewhat better. Yeah, these are all workable. I hope you all enjoyed the mukbang portion of this video. It's always a pleasure to share a meal with others. Hopefully what's it called? I had good manners while eating. I feel like the chat froze. Maybe everyone's just kind of running out of things to say. I don't know. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Because if so, I'll keep doing this. But because I see there's like 20 folks watching right now, according to YouTube. The dog content was nice. Yes, always add dog content when there's an option. Yeah. Oh, I could, I feel like someone has asked me this one time, what am I reading? And I don't think I answered, but I just happen to have several books that I have been reading. So let's just get this pile of books and I'll just do a quick rundown. We made it, Joe. We did it. Okay. So, forgot one. Right now, you're welcome, Corey. Thanks for coming on. It's nice to spend time with my internet people. So, first thing, I am currently reading A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I would describe this as a Harry Potter for folks who want their Harry Potter to be more violent. I'd say it's like Harry Potter for adults. There's a lot more violence. I haven't read any licentious scenes yet. I'm about that far away, or far through. But it's been pretty good. I used to read Naomi Novik a lot more when I was younger. I was reading her Temeraire series, which is about dragons in the Napoleonic era. And I liked it at the time, and then I just stopped reading it for a while because like I got to the end of the series and I picked up something else and never went back. It's interesting, and also the way that it's written is like you'll be reading and you'll be reading and you'll be reading, and then suddenly you learn about the history or the world building happens because there's like a flashback. But it's not like an actual flashback. It's like suddenly the narrator's talking about a thing that happened to them like 20 years ago. And I don't hate it, but when I realize it's happening, it's just something that kind of pulls me from the book. But it's good. I like it. If you want some kind of fantasy tied into the current world where wizards exist along with us, go for it. A book I just picked up yesterday that I'm so happy to get is Return of the Trickster, which is number 3 in the Trickster series by Eden Robinson. So Eden Robinson is an Indigenous author, a First Nations author here in British Columbia, and her first book was called Son of a Trickster, and I loved that book so much. I have a copy of it somewhere, or I loaned it to someone, but of all the books I've ever read, no book has portrayed the poverty that I experienced and a childhood that I experienced like that book did. Like it was just like very honest. It didn't pull any punches, but it didn't like, as bad as it wasn't like, oh, boo-hoo, woe for me. It was like, this is just how it is, as part of the world building, as it were. And I really appreciate that because it's not something you really see that often in literature. And then of course the rest of the book, like it has an element in the first book. I'm talking about the first book, Son of a Trickster, again, by Eden Robinson. Like throughout the book, it helps that it was all in Vancouver. So it's like, oh, I know where this is all taking place. There's just the suggestion of magic. And then all of a sudden, oh, and it makes sense. And I don't want to spoil it. You should read it. Again, Son of a Trickster by Eden Robinson. So good. Love it. I'm very excited to start this actually quite soon. Next book I have is The Broken Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin. So this is part 2 of, I want to say, a trilogy, and I just read the first one last month. It is, so there are gods, and then the gods, like there's a big god, like the god of light ends up being like the main god in the first book, and eventually enslaved the other gods because gods are petty. And as terms, like the terms of the enslavement are those other lesser gods then become tools basically for humanity to use at will. And it's very much like political intrigue mixed with high fantasy elements, character-driven storylines. Yeah, very good. I don't know if that's a good description. If anyone else has read it, by all means, share in the chat what you thought. I'm going to check the chat because I saw some stuff rolling across. I think so much of our attention would have been amped for 3D printing and cryptocurrency, all the more if the current public health scene hadn't happened. Yeah, I felt really good about work before all of this happened. I'm very sad that all of this happened, but I think, you know, that's part of the human experience. Things unexpected happen. Someday it will no longer be what it is now, and that will be nice. And we will look back on what happened now, not with fondness, but maybe. Blockchain is going to impact library and info study fields, in my opinion, Peter. And you being a more computer science-oriented fellow, I see you understanding it when it happens. Well, you know, Terminal Buddy, blockchain is actually a thing that the Information Studies Department at University of British Columbia is involved in, specifically in the archival side of things. So if you are curious about how that's playing out already, just do a Google search of blockchain at arroba, the @ sign, UBC, so blockchain at UBC. and you can see how that's playing out and what folks are talking about. And I think since we're still in the pandemic, they might still be doing some live stream seminars about the topic. So yeah. Oh yeah, you did ask me. That's right. See, it's like I was anticipating after the fact your expectations of me, Athena. If you want Canada open, get the vaccine. Yes. Speaking of books you like, sometimes I request a library order a book that I enjoy, I've already read, simply because it supports the author and gives others the opportunity to read it. Good. Yes. Yes. Get libraries to buy authors' books. It's like a weird misunderstanding that I've talked to a few authors about. Like, a lot of folks feel like, oh, libraries are actually not friends of authors because, like, well, just think of how many people aren't buying that book because the library bought it. Okay, yes, but also the flip side of that is people who read more, which libraries promote is reading, ultimately end up making more money throughout their lifetimes and then buy more books in their lifetimes. And lots of folks who find a book in a library will then buy that book because they love it, because people are dragons and hoard things like dragons do. So yeah, and then like the last thing I like to say is, depending on where you live, like there are thousands upon thousands of libraries, and if you can get as many libraries as possible to buy your book, that gets you quite a significant way towards finishing your advance, like paying off your advance, and start actually making royalties from the book that you publish. So libraries are friends of authors. That's all. Pretty much never check out that book myself. I'm fine with it. Yeah. So the ordering a book because you think it's good or because you like the author, but then never asking for the book yourself, I think that's great. I see no problem with it. Yeah. You have my blessing. Career technical writer. And he's one of the few sharp enough at this point to try and do a financial techno thriller on cryptocurrency. Oh, interesting. John Green's new book. Oh yeah, the Anthropocene Reviewed is out. I still need to read that. I just finished A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, and that was very good. Very good. Speaking of books that feature cryptocurrency. When I can, I'm going to listen to the Anthropocene Reviewed. I figured there were some here. I just got my signed copy of TAR. The book has a few extra reviews that the audiobook doesn't, and the same in reverse. Nice. Nice to hear you say arroba. Well, you know, I take a lot of pride in being multilingual. As folks may know, once upon a time, I was in the Navy, and while I was in the Navy, I worked as an interpreter, and other things, specifically with Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. So yeah, I do my best to keep it up. I actually use Spanish quite a bit and Mandarin quite a bit at work because the city that I work in has a very large Mandarin speaking population, which is nice. Nice. Yeah. All right, so ABFE, Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. I plan to listen to it. Got a physical copy. Just check out. One of the nice things about being a librarian is I don't buy books anymore because I get my workplace to buy them for me. But also, I don't have the storage for it. I'm not going to show you my room because it's a mess, but it's nice working at a library because if I want something, I put in a purchase request, and then cataloging buys it and puts it on hold for me first. Not to brag or anything. A little to brag, I should say. Oh, hey, Caitlin. Hey, Caitlin. How's it going? Excellent. Any advice on how to become more fluent in Spanish? I took classes in high school and also my college, and I'm currently working on Duolingo, but I'm still not as fluent as I want to be. Yes, become more fluent in Spanish by using Spanish. Seek out opportunities to use Spanish. That could be volunteering in your community, going to Mexican restaurants. Those are like the big ones, depending on what you do. You said you're a cataloger. See if you can get your library to let you sit in on some programming. Get them to arrange programming for your local Latinx community. It will be great. You will love it. And honestly, that's the biggest barrier to getting proficient in another language is people feel really embarrassed to use it, I find, because they feel like they're never good enough. And the truth is, yeah, you're right. You're not good enough. But you're not going to get better by not doing it. That was a big stumbling block for me for a while. And then I just decided, fuck it. I'm going to do it. And now I spend a lot of time watching stuff on Netflix. I just started watching a show called Vecino, or Neighbor in English. It's from Spain, so it's horribly fast Spanish, and it's hard for me to keep up. But I can turn the subtitles on, and then I can hear them talk, but I can read the subtitles just fine and get it. And that's perfect. And then I started watching... Oh, I just watched a movie that was in Spanish that wasn't Spain Spanish. What was it? It was... Dime cuando eres? I think... Was that what it was? Dime cuando tú. Which is like a... It's like a romantic comedy, but it's not a romantic comedy. It's like there's funny elements to it, but it's not the traditional like... Romance plays a part of it, but it is not the end of it. Yeah, that's how to put it. But it's very good, and it's Mexican Spanish, and they talk a lot more reasonably paced, which made it more enjoyable and much more comforting to me to watch. Even if I've been journaling for 10 plus years of my life, short story writing is not something I've taken to as quickly as directly as I thought I would. Yeah, I was just thinking about that earlier. Like, I've been wanting to get back into writing. Part of it is because I miss writing scripts for Stacks and Facts, but part of it is I just miss writing. I used to write a ton. I did a lot of like fan fiction when I was younger, and it felt really good to flex that muscle and to imagine something. And I've been thinking about like, should I just start doing bite-sized little writing things? Because I have this book. Which is the Pocket Muse, Ideas and Inspirations for Writing. And it's just a bunch of prompts. Like some of them are word prompts, but some of them are just pictures. And you take from it what you want. And you write something. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least it gives you something to start with. And I collect notebooks as a hobby, so I have plenty of paper to write with. I just haven't gotten into it yet because the pandemic has killed my ability to do most things. It's fine. There is no shame. You are correct, Terminal 281. There is no shame in admitting that you're not as into reading as much as you are into doing art. And you don't know when that'll shift again. That is perfectly natural. A thing that I've wanted to talk about, and I might still, is like, again, it goes back to the pandemic, but the reality is that we are all traumatized. We have all been through a horrific thing that can make us question what our reality actually is based on how others are acting and how others treat things and how the world has changed around us and how little agency we feel like we have in that changing world and changing environment that we find ourselves in. And we're traumatized from that. And like, that's not an exaggeration and it's not a horrible thing. That just is what it is. And one of the side effects of being traumatized people is things that we find pleasure in before, or things that we have wanted to do or want to do, we can't do them. We are not able to cope in a way that lets us do that. And that's not a bad thing. It is just a thing. And we got to figure out how to deal with that. For me, I have been to like 6 therapy sessions this year. Because I've been trying to work things out. Like back in November to December, I got really depressed. Like all the way into January, February. And I've dealt with depression before in my life, but it was just something like the ways that I deal with depression usually were not options to me because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so I tried something, and that something was going to therapy. And it cost me money. It cost me more money than I wanted to spend, but it was what I had to do. And of course, it's been helping now that the weather's getting nicer. But like I think it helps even just to start by saying what it is and giving it a name to what we're experiencing. We are experiencing trauma, and that affects us in really big, sometimes not understandable ways. And start from there and think about like, how would you want to move through trauma? How would you want to help someone else who's been traumatized? And I think, yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of big thoughts about that. I want to write a script on it. I will at some point, perhaps, but I don't know when. And it's always hard to think of like, I have these ideas about things that I want to write about, but they aren't always necessarily related to librarianship. And so like, is it worth writing about and making a video? Not the right audience. Who knows? Who knows? We're all traumatized. That's the moral of the story. Eat more pot stickers and sushi. Oh, someone asked before how the sushi is in Vancouver. It's great. Now you know. Okay. I do use Spanish when I go to restaurants. I should look for some volunteer opportunities, though. I think I may also contact my undergrad, see if they allow alumni in their Spanish club. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. Honestly, whatever you can do it. I do speak Spanish with some individuals on Discord while playing video games. I love it. It's quite helpful and fun. And it gives you a sense for maybe some of the slang that is out there. Oh, fun little trivia about Latin American Spanish Terminal 281. Good to know. And then Caitlin recommends looking for adult literacy programs. Yes. Lots of folks who participate in my area speak Spanish as a first language. Invite their groups and orgs to use your library space. Audiobooks are great, y'all. Although I do find myself, like if I'm doing anything creative, and I think part of it is to do with the fact that like for me, creative tends to be writing or language based. I can't listen to things that have words. And for a while, way back in the beginning of the pandemic, I was listening to audiobooks as a way to help myself fall asleep. Fun fact, Sherlock Holmes, the entire Sherlock Holmes like body of work has been translated into Mandarin. And I accidentally learned that listening to Sherlock Holmes in Mandarin will knock me right out. So maybe it'll work for you too if you have sleeping problems. Writing exercises. Another use for Discord. Yeah. Is if Elise is still in the chat, she might not be, but you can find her on Twitter at Elise Logan. She does some, I want to say she does some writing Discord stuff, and you can hit her up. Just tell her I sent you. I will feel no shame about volunteering her to do something, because I'm a horrible person. No, I'm not. I actually functionally burned myself out from journaling by last September, and it drastically changed my style. Think on translating videos by me. Yes, mental health conversations. So it's important to me to talk about mental health for many reasons. I have mentioned bits of my past, and there are other parts that I have not mentioned on this channel because it's not necessarily related to librarianship. But I worked as a sexual assault victim advocate for a while when I was in the Navy. And there are reasons that I did that. And so from that and some other volunteer work that I've done, I'm a bit more equipped than the average Joe to talk about mental health stuff. And I'm much more willing to do it because, So thanks for recognizing that. Focus is less scattered, maybe being on the factory. Right. Oh man, Megan. Can you imagine though, like trying to listen to audiobooks while you're cataloging and it's like you accidentally edit the record to describe the book you're listening to and suddenly like everyone's checking out certain books that are really good, but like the poor people at the service desk getting so many like, this isn't about knitting in the 18th century Scotland. I feel betrayed. This was a steamy bodice ripper. There was far more sex than I was expecting. I'm sorry. I love the voices, y'all. You know what's done really well for me in terms of things to listen to while I do creative stuff? Lo-fi hip-hop, y'all. Like, I have leaned into that hard, and I love it. And it's great for productiveness, but it's also great for relaxation. And then the other thing that I quite like is for relaxation anyways, and I did this yesterday. So show of hands, who has been playing Animal Crossing New Horizons? Yeah, me too. Did you know that before the shop on the island closes, it plays closing music? And the closing music is just so sweet, and it's so lullaby-y. And so someone went and just made a 30-minute loop of it on YouTube. And it's just so pleasant. I put myself to sleep thinking about it now. But, yeah. In fact, speaking of lo-fi hip-hop, Sabrina from Nerdy and Quirky did a video about lo-fi hip-hop. Specifically, it was about how to get an AI to generate lo-fi hip-hop music. And it didn't go great. But it was fun to listen to / watch because she did an in-depth exploration of like what makes lo-fi hip-hop so good for being a creative driver. Yeah. Bardcore. You must tell me more about this bardcore. Oh, that's right. Yeah, she renamed the channel because Nerdy and Quirky was like from a different phase of her life. I'm glad to see that we've all already seen this video because this is just the life that we live now. We just all spend so much time on the internet. It's fine. Yep. And it's nice sometimes to pull up the actual live streams of lo-fi hip-hop because like you look at the chats and they're so wholesome and so nice. I love them. Oh, I didn't finish telling you guys about the books that I'm reading, so I'm going to do that real quick. So I got this book. I put in a purchase request for it. I wouldn't buy it myself, but I'd buy it for the library. It's called Worth It by Dan Price, the CEO of Gravity Payment. So Dan Price's thing is that he is the CEO of a company in Seattle, and he decided that he was just going to change it. Like, he had some coming to Jesus moment or something where he decided that instead of making as much money as he was making as the CEO, he would cut his salary and then raise the floor so that everyone in his company made $70,000 starting, and how it was just super humane and really turned things around. And I got curious and I thought, I should get that book and read it. And I really should, because it's due back to the library in like 6 days. But I have so many other books that I want to read more than it. So someday I'll read it. But, the privilege of being a librarian at a library that has no fines is I have no incentive to bring things back on time at all. That's not true. I care about my patrons, but they can wait. And then next thing is this book called translated from the gibberish by, I want to say, Anush Irani, who is a, I want to say, writer in residence at Simon Fraser University's Department of Languages and Literature, World Languages and Literature. So Simon Fraser University, SFU, is the other big university here in Vancouver, Metro Vancouver. And I went to their like rebranding party on Zoom because that's the world we find ourselves in. And they did a random draw, and I won for a book, and I felt very good about that. So I started reading it, but it's a bunch of short stories, so I don't feel super bad about not making a ton of progress. But a thing that I found interesting about it is that the book has a bunch of short stories, but then the first one and the last one go together. So you can read the first part of the book and then the last part of the book, and then you can go back and read the rest of the book. And it just comes out really nice. It's a good novella. Good reading that you can read without committing to it. And the last thing that's sitting on my nightstand, this is called The Gardener. And it is Indian poetry, Indian love poetry, translated into Mandarin and then translated into English. So it's a dual language book. And so the way that plays out is on one side, you have the Chinese, and on the other side, you have the English. And I love books like this, and you don't see them too often anymore. And they tend to be quite hard to get through. But I like this because it's short, and it's fun little snippets, and just, it's good practice. I don't feel like I have to commit a ton of time to it to get something from it. So, okay, let's get caught up on that chat. Yes, we all love lo-fi hip-hop. Consensus. We have achieved consensus. I'd like to blame my YouTube watching on the pandemic, but let's be real. I've always watched too much YouTube, even in the before times. You and me both, Megan. You and me both. Haven't read it, but Dan Howell's new book is good. Who's Dan Howell? I don't remember who Dan Howell is. But it could be good. Maybe I'll have to order it for the library and find out. I know, I'm sorry. It's getting to that point in the day where I'm sleepy. And so it goes. Whereas you are all the way over there on the East Coast being like, sleepy, it's 10:30. Get your life together, Peter. I'm getting it, y'all. As librarians, are you all constantly aware of the future date materials are due back, like 1 week ahead, 2 weeks, etc.? No, actually, the only reason I was aware of that book is because I just my library system just we're updating our mobile app. And so I just earlier today installed the beta version of the app on my phone, and I was flipping through it and I saw the due dates and I was like, oh, good to know. Maybe I should reorder those things, but I'm not going to because I want to read what I want to read, and we're in a pandemic and that's what I want to do. So that's what I'm going to do. Megan, they exist for English and Spanish too. A lot of them are generally books for kids. This particular one I got in probably 2012. There are a few bookstores in the Bay Area that specifically do, like, they're Chinese bookstores. And one's in San Francisco, it's called Dongfeng. And they are one of the main suppliers for the Chinese department at the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, which is where I learned Chinese, and now you know. But I imagine you could probably find other places. Just, I don't know who you'd reach out to find that, though. Email me if you want, and I'll see at work if I can track some down for you. I think we have some. I'm so sorry, y'all. This is a house of people who go to bed fairly early, so... yeah. Oh, it is Dan is Not on Fire. Okay, cool. I was thinking it was Dan is Not on Fire, but for whatever reason, I was thinking, like, my brain kept thinking, Dan Howell. Oh, you mean Charlie is so cool? Like, no, that's not right. That's a Charlie, not a Dan. Any non-fiction titles that I'm fond of? Oh, yeah. Let me pull up my borrowing history. Let's see. I can't think of what I've been reading so much that, yeah. All right. So borrowing history, 63 items since I turned it on. I feel pretty good about that. I didn't used to read as much. Well, I read a ton when I was younger, and then when I got in the Navy, I read less. And then when I got into grad school, I read nothing, and now I'm getting back into it. But as far as nonfiction that I really like, I just read Goodbye Again by Johnny Sun, which is essays, reflections, and illustrations. And it is a book of like fairly short essays. And it's by a Canadian author, well, Canadian doer of a lot of things, who lives out in Toronto, just reflecting on things like anxiety and things like his place in the world, moving, just a lot of different things. And that was really good. He also wrote another book, a graphic novel called Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too, which is delightful. What else? I borrowed a graphic novel when I was thinking about writing that script around trauma stuff, called Trauma is Really Strange by Steve Haynes, that talks about the trauma response as it exists in the body. I don't remember borrowing that book. I hope I returned it. I probably did. Oh well. The joys of looking at my borrowing history, it's fine. Yeah, nothing lately. I've been on a fiction kick, I think, as my way of, doing a little bit of escapism. So, yeah. Neurotransmissions. Hey, who's that? Is it Allie? No, it's not Allie. It's, let's see. Everybody, check out Neurotransmissions. Great channel. It is a dynamic duo of folks who talk about the brain and brain science. If you ever wanted to know if you can train your cat to use buttons to communicate, they did a great video on that. I won't spoil it for you, but odds aren't good. Dual language books. I've enjoyed seeing that. Oh, it is Micah. Excellent. Yeah, Micah's a treasure. Micah is, speaking of mental health stuff, and appropriately dealing with mental health in the world, Micah is a therapy person whose nature I can't remember. But yeah, does a lot of really good stuff. And is just so good, so pure. Honestly, I would move to LA or wherever Micah and Ali live and just be your friends forever in person. I miss you guys. Maybe someday we'll have VidCon or EduCon again. Who knows? Appreciate seeing the original language for poetry, especially more than narrative, since poetry is not uncommonly meant to be spoken. Yeah. Vaporwave and the Commodification of Ghosts by Grafton Tanner. Yeah, Aaron, it's true. Like every now and then, various words will slip into various Canadianisms will slip into my manner of speech, and it's fine. It's fine. I say borrowing, and I say what else? There was one when I first moved up here. It's one of my first videos, and I can't think of the word, but like, I thought that in Canada they only said that word one way, and it's not the same way that we say it in American English. But it turns out they say it both ways depending on if the word's a noun or a verb. Anyways, yeah, Canadianisms, I tell ya. Oh, yeah. Cien Años de Solitude. Gotta love some Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I do. So, I could just show you the books that I have. I mentioned the place that I live is very small. And so, here's how I store my books in a pile behind my computer screens. And these are the books that I currently have. If anyone's curious, let's see. Buffering by Hannah Hart, another good book to talk about childhood trauma and mental health, and the weirdness of being an internet person. American Savage by Dan Savage. Haven't read it. The Essence of Happiness, which is a smaller version of The Guide to Happiness by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We've also got Weapons of Math Destruction, so if you're curious about the ethics of information and how we are using things like artificial intelligence to hurt people more than help them, that's a great read. It was one of the required textbooks that I had during my master's. Yeah, lots of books, y'all. I should just move this window over here. And then I will stop looking to the side when I read the chat. Oh, yeah. Children of Blood and Bone is very good. Tommy, I don't know how to pronounce her first name. I just got to own that. The author did a very good job with the book. I bought it when it first came out. But at that point, other things in my life were happening that just really put me out of the mood of reading anything that might be a little dark or depressing. So I sat on it, and then finally, because of course I did, I read it during the pandemic, and I was like, what? This is amazing. And it just so happened that the timing was good, because that was when the second or third book came out. I think it's a trilogy. Maybe it was when the third book came out. But yeah, good book. Recommend. I think the second book is Children of Virtue and something. Children of Virtue and Vengeance. Yeah. Is it a trilogy or a duology? I do not remember, y'all. Oh, it's just a duology. Or is it a trilogy? I don't remember. Life is hard, y'all. Ooh. Pulling up my library's website because the catalogers did a much. Oh, okay, I guess it's. It is a duology. Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to check Twitter, make sure no one's been tweeting at me saying, Peter, answer this burning question that I won't ask you in the chat. Vemos. No hay nada. But there are a few folks who say hello. So hello to all y'all. Very good, Aaron. Very good. Oh, now I'm gonna... What's that word? It's like... I can't think of it. Oh, well. I'll think of it tonight when I'm sleeping, and then I'll let you know. Micah. Ugh. I love it. So, yeah. I should get some water. Y'all, let me grab some water. I won't hang up yet, but I'll be right back. I'm thirsty. Self-care. Sure. Maybe.
It's easy.
Need me to try your hair?
No, do you see the big red mark on my back?
Yeah. Need me to Sharpie it?
I can't see the big red mark on my back, but I'm told it's there.
It's there.
I stood up under something. I forgot it was above me.
Well, let that be a lesson to you, never to stand up. I just kidding. Hey, I'm back. Yeah. All right. So today's live stream is brought to you by Bubbly. No calories, no sweeteners, and all smiles. Now that I've said that, Bubbly is legally obliged to pay me for all of the ad revenue that I am going to make from this video, which is none. It's fine. All right, let's see. What have you guys been gossiping about while I've been away? The poems of Saint John of the Cross. I knew it. X-Men related character, Jamie Matrox. Multiple Man. Yeah, that would be nice. I am influencing the Canadians to say y'all. I don't know what you're talking about, Athena. I was yawning. I'm not tired at all. Nope. Yeah. Seltzer. All right. So, anyways, how's everyone doing? Anyone else got any questions? Any pressing issues? Anything going on? Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, Eldritch. You're so close. You can do it. And just think, pretty soon you'll be like, no, I don't want these semesters to be over at all. Or maybe I'm projecting. I've said it several times during the stream, but I really enjoyed being in grad school. Maybe that's a sign that I should go back for a PhD. But I know it's not. Because PhDs are so much more work. And they don't pay very well while you're doing them. Questions about anything. You can ask me for life advice. You can ask me about libraries. You could ask me about socio-political stuff. Excuse me. Math, though I wouldn't ask me about math. The dog is doing okay. She's had 2 surgeries. Yeah. I mean, she's come in before. We gave her some screen time, but I'm sure everyone will like to see her more because everyone loves her more than me.
Do you want to come visit the internet dog?
Hey, Vic.
Come here.
Come here. The dog is coming back. For those of you who are joining us later. Hi, baby. Hi. Can I show you to the people? Just go. Oh, it's the baby. Hi, baby. Hi.
They still can't see speaker.
They can. It just has to catch up for a second. I show you.
Oh.
There.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Hey, baby. Are you so cute? Are you actually a worm? Hey, Vic. What's this? What's this? What's this? What's over here? Look. Is it people?
No, Dad, that's a computer screen.
Are you such a good dog?
I am such a good dog, guys. Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria, and if you want to see me more, you should follow Peter's Instagram, because he often videotapes me and takes pictures of me in very risque poses, and he talks like this for me, because I'm a dog and I cannot talk. Anyways.
Yeah. Are you such a good dog?
I'm such a good dog, guys.
Yeah, you are. Okay, let's see what the people have to say about you. It should be caught up now. The people say, Puppy, it's true. Vic's just chilling on the human lap. Oh, yeah. This is not the most comfortable. I would try and show you, but she has 2 scars now, and they match. They're symmetrical on the inside of her knees. Because she had a surgery to help deal with her arthritic knees, because she is secretly an old woman dog. But she's not. She's actually still quite young. You're still quite young. She's like 7, I think. 6 or 7.
7, yeah.
Yep.
You're such a good dog, though. Thanks, Dad.
I kiss her a lot because she's a very good dog and she deserves to know. Also, she's really funny because she's got the chest of a kangaroo. Like if you ever look at kangaroos when they box, that's what she's got going on. Because she's buff. She's part pit bull, but the sweetest parts, so it's fine. Do you want down?
Yes, Dad.
Okay. There you go. Head rush.
Dad, that was too much.
She's right, it was too much.
You come sit with Mama now?
Regarding Libby, I do love Libby. Libby is a great app. It's probably, for a while, I was really hardcore Overdrive, and then I realized why. And I think part of me was like, it's cooler because it's the old school, but it's just not as nice. So I'm a Libby convert, 100%. Oldest book in our library. It's not very old. We're pretty aggressive with our collection development, but let's see if I can find it just from our bibliocommons. Let's see. Recent activity. I can never remember how to just search for everything. That didn't do it though. How about advanced search? Okay. So we're going to do the advanced search. And we're going to do between 1800 and 1920 for published date. We're going to search. Let's see. I should have specified books because I'm getting a bunch of oh, here's a book. Oh, but I think that's the original published date, not when that particular book came out. To answer your question, I can't tell you the oldest book that we have because I don't think that we have that metadata. I mean, we do, but not on the public-facing side. So we will never know. As for my opinion on spicy water, I love it. Whatever it takes to get me to drink more water. As a Californian, I used to be much better at drinking water because it was a matter of life and death when it got to summer. But since moving to Canada, where the temperature is much tamer, shall we say, I've gotten worse at it. And so whatever I can do now to make myself drink more, if that means doing water that has bubbles and flavor, then that's what we do. Do I want to teach Spanish or Mandarin? No. I want to speak Spanish or Mandarin, but I I don't like the idea of teaching a language, except for English. I could teach English. That would be fun. And I've done language tutoring before. And tutoring, though, I think it's a little bit different. But yeah, I don't want to teach foreign languages. I'd rather that be a thing that a native speaker does. Megan loves Psy. Excellent. That person just followed me on Twitter. Maybe it was you, Megan. What you said once about how to get into being a historian, archiving or publishing if you'd like to work around books but not people, as being in a library entails. Yep. I'm glad. Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that people understand what librarianship is and isn't. And part of it is like a very selfish desire to like make sure that only the people who want to go into librarians are the folks who would be good at it, because there are too many librarians. But also, like, part of it is I want to make sure that the people who are doing the work enjoy the work that they're doing. I don't want to have miserable colleagues, you know? Miserable people are not fun to work with. And so if I can save you that suffering, I hope I can do that. Where do books go when they die? Oh yeah, no, they we were talking about that yesterday because we're about to start doing a giant weeding project at work. When a book gets to the end of its life as a library book, before the pandemic, it had possible odds of going to our sale table. So my system, unlike most library systems, doesn't have a Friends of the Library organization. And those are the folks who usually organize book sales or things like that. But for us, we just have a table. And so we put old books. We used to put old books there and people would go through them and pick them up for like 10 cents. We sold them for 10 cents so that people could feel like they were helping the library. But they were never, like, our book sales were never a significant source of revenue because our city funds us well enough to an extent. But now that we don't do that anymore and we don't accept donations, and that was also what we did with donations, we would just sell donations immediately. With books that have come into the library and cycled and we decide to get rid of them because they're not up to date, if they're still in good condition, well, even if they're not in good condition, we recycle them. We chuck them. That's it. Nothing fancy. There's a process. So we call it weeding in the profession. We call like the act of pulling a book out of circulation weeding, and what it takes to get to that point. And usually the way that we weed is a librarian will get assigned a section of the library, and they will pull all of the books. Well, first we'll use our ILS, the Integrated Library System, to generate a report, and that report will tell us. It'll give us a list of books based on the criteria that we specify. So, for example, fewer than 5 checkouts in the past 5 years or something like that. Usually it's like no circulations in the past 2 years is like the bare bones weeding criteria. And then we'll pull all of the books and we will look at them after, like, physically pull them off the shelves, and we will look at them and decide, excuse me, is there something wrong with this book, like the way that it covers a material or a subject? Is it no longer relevant? Is it wrong? Or is it just no longer popular? And we will then mark it to either keep or get rid of, usually more often than not get rid of. But usually when we mark something to get rid of, we also keep track of where that leaves our collection. So like what subject headings do we still have represented in our collection? And if we weed like the 600s, like the 640s, for example, cookbooks is always a never-ending struggle. If we find ourselves with no cookbooks about, gosh, I don't know, asparagus or something like that, that's just an example, we will make an effort to make sure that we replace it with something that covers the book that we just got rid of. because we always want to keep a fairly broad collection, at least at our central branch, our biggest, because it's a 2-story beast with a very large reference section. Yeah, but that's what happens. And then the books that we get rid of, we thank them, we chuck them. Hopefully that answers your question. Another random question from Megan. Did your MLIS program require you to do an online portfolio site of sorts? If so, have you kept up with it after graduation? Ooh, what a good question. So, when I started my MLIS, they had just started thinking about making that a requirement of having an online portfolio of your work. But they hadn't implemented it yet. However, by the year that once I got into my last year of studies, because I had been teaching, if you recall, technology in the core workshop, so HTML, CSS, access databases, they decided that it was time to make that a requirement. And so they asked me to put together a workshop on content management systems. And so I did that so that I could teach the new students how to use the ePortfolio platform that we have, which is just a fancied up WordPress. I'm sure I still have mine. I wonder at .ubcarts. But I can't think of where it... Oh, there it is. Yeah. It's great. Okay, y'all, hold on. I'm gonna since we asked about my ePortfolio, let's go to whoop. All right, so here's the ePortfolio that I put together. I had a little bit of too much fun, but as you can see, we have my name. At some point, it became obnoxious colors because I was also using it to teach other students how to use the platform. Hence, pink on blue on yellow because I'm a monster. But I found this little scrolling thing to be a little fun feature that they incorporated, and then it's just tiles, just fancy tiles. You can go to skills, and you can choose whatever skills to see the things that are related. But yeah, I think by looking at my portfolio, you can get a sense that like I did a lot of technology stuff. Yeah, a little bit of curriculum development, a little bit of document design, a little bit of editing, instructing, new media, web design, user testing. Oh yeah, one of my classes, I think it was systems design, we decided to design Dog Meet Dog, which was an app for good dogs. It was actually a really fun project. We got to prototype and do some user testing for an app that was like a dating app for folks who wanted to meet dogs. I still have the prototype somewhere, but yeah, I got to do some wireframing and let's see, I don't think I have screenshots, but it was basically just an excuse to use a lot of puns. My name is Doug, and I think all dogs are good dogs. When I was a child, ... I really enjoyed grad school, y'all. Also, as you can see, I am not an artist. And now you know. All right, so I'm just reading the chat, the chat words real quick. Stand account, yeah. Oh, 21 Pilots. Gotta love those Canadian musicians. I think 21 Pilots is Canadian. During COVID, yeah. Ooh. You know what? It's fine to get rid of all those chapter books. We have too many. Library also sells books in our Friends of Library sale, or we recycle. When we do, we color out the barcode on the book, remove the card from the card catalog, and then our student workers use X-Acto knives to cut the pages out of the book. Pages covers of trash are donated to our art department. Oh, nice. Yeah, I've actually been thinking about repurposing some of our newspapers and magazines because we cycle through those so quickly. And Sarah Iris Green of the art assignment and also the Yeti has been doing, I think, 52 collages of the pandemic on her Instagram, on the art assignment Instagram. And it makes me really want to do that. So who knows? Maybe I'll do that. Start smuggling old magazines home. Oh, Ohio. I mean, Ohio's like Canada. Ohio is like the Canada of the Midwest. Or maybe that's Minnesota. One of those two. Audiobooks per se are digital materials culled based on the same borrowing stats, but instead of tracking the hard copies, you archive files. Ooh. No. So with digital materials, let me bring my beautiful face back. Hello. So with digital materials, for audiobooks on CD, we just check them again. Like, we recycle them. I think we send them to e-waste. But for ebooks and audiobooks, the way that those work, I did a great video on it, and you should watch it if you haven't yet. We license those from the publishers. So the publishers, when they loan ebooks and audiobooks to libraries, it's on a fairly restrictive license. Usually they'll only let library patrons access that material for 12 months total, or a certain number of borrows. And then once that number is hit, the files go poof. They go away. Unless we buy another license or we renew the license. But if we don't, they go away. And it's absurd because they're so expensive, and publishers charge libraries a lot of money for them. But yeah, that's those. It's a bit of a stinker, but yeah. Oh yeah, so Terminal, the class I did, New Media for Children and Young Adults. I did a class called New Media for Children and Young Adults. And one of the assignments was to make memes. And so I figured I wanted to make a meme of Russell Crowe saying, "Are you not edutained?" Because I used that as the title for my final project, which was a taxonomy for educational YouTube videos to serve learners and teachers. And it was very fun. And so I made the meme to go with it. Yeah. Whew. All right, y'all. Well, you aren't slowing down, but I'm slowing down. And I'm getting sleepy because I am a big baby. But this has been really lovely. Should I do this? Should I do these streams more often since people seem to enjoy them? Let me know. I'm not against it. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to schedule because my personal schedule, like my work schedule, is all over the place. But I enjoy it, and if it pleases you, it pleases me. But perhaps not for 2 hours. This has been very long. Yeah. We'll just give you guys a couple more minutes. Ask any questions you want. And then I'm going to call it. Do I have any opinion of the movie The Public and its depictions of the homeless and librarians, if you've seen it? I have not seen it, but I know that a lot of librarians like it. My library system did a staff-only screening of it that I didn't go to because I was doing something else. This was before the pandemic. But I've heard okay things about it. But yeah, I've heard less okay things about it as well. I'll have to watch it. One of these days I'll see it, and then I'll let you know. Yeah. spontaneous streams instead of scheduling. Well, actually, that's a thing. For those of you who are in the stream right now, how did you find out about the stream? Was it because I had set up notifications or anything like that? Or like when you signed into Twitter, did it just show that, oh, Peter's streaming or Stacks and Facts is streaming, and then you decided to watch it that way? Because I know I scheduled it in advance, and then I did a community post on YouTube with a link to it, and then I think a couple days ago I did a link to it, and then tonight, right before it started, I did another link to it. But I don't know how people get the words. I posted a link to it on the Patreon, which is why Althena knows. I mean, Althena knows everything because that's just how we roll in this town. Candace knows everything. I would love to do story time. Like the tricky thing with reading things is they copyright. That's it. That's the tricky thing. Copyright. It's a pain in the butt. But who knows? Maybe I'll find something that's in the public domain. For a while, I was fun piece of trivia, and maybe you have seen this already, but Stacks and Facts, the channel, was originally called Bookery, and I created the channel because my plan was to read Jane Austen novels because they were in the public domain, just chapter by chapter, to the internet. And I did like 3 chapters, and then I got bored and did something else because ADHD. But yeah, now you know. YouTube live stream placeholder, my subscription saying when it started, and I clicked on it and told it to mirror on me. Nice. Notification. Nice. My YouTube subscription feed clicked away from what I was watching to hang to it. Aww. Thanks for giving me a shot. Read the beginning of Pride and Prejudice. Yes, I did read the beginning of Pride and Prejudice. If you ever want to hear those videos, I think I made it as a Patreon perk, so go support me on Patreon and scroll down through the history and you'll find those. Yeah, in theory, Mickey Mouse is going into public domain. See, so in theory, in other places, up until the stupid, the most recent edition of, it's called the USMCA now, but the free trade, NAFTA, the newest version of NAFTA, up until that passed, Canada and the US had different public domain copyright sessions, and that was better because Canada's was in line with the rest of the world, which is the life of the creator plus 50 years. But in the US, it's the life of the creator plus like 72 or 73 years. And the reason that got extended in the first place at all was because Walt Disney Company went and lobbied Congress to extend that so that they could keep creative license over all of the Disney products that Walt Disney had created. Because, now you know. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, good night, friends. I love you all. Have an excellent sleep. This has been a great chat. And until next time, don't forget to ask questions. Take care of yourselves.